Thanks, Joe.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting for Monday, September 26th. Mr. Clerk, would you lead us through the Pledge of the Flag?
Absolutely. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, we have a jam-packed agenda tonight. So efficiency is part of the name of this game. At 6:30, organization Pledge of Allegiance, read mail. 6:35, several town board / joint meetings. First one is a building projects updates with PMBC, school committee, library trustees, and finance committee. B is budget guidelines with finance committee and school committee. C is financial policies with finance committee and school committee. D is joint meeting to fill vacancy with Board of Health. E, filling community preservation committee vacancy. F, November 16, 2016 special town meeting articles. At 7:40, we'll have input and updates. First, public. Second, members' updates. Third, selectmen goal updates. At 7:50, 5 different items under town administrator, assistant town administrator for finance and budget, including cemetery commissioner's MOA regarding cemetery superintendent supervision. Second, highway public works reorganization plan. Third, finance and administration succession reorganization plan. Fourth, all alcoholic package store license. Fifth, settlement agreement for new track system. 8:20, medical marijuana cultivation site application sanctuary medicinals. 8:50, other business including minutes approval, and then we will end in executive session for 2 reasons: litigation strategy and value of land. All right, so let's dig right in. We do expect to have a full board, so they just might be running a little late.
One is 5 minutes out.
One is
Chuck.
Okay, perfect. We've got an ETA of 5 minutes on one. Excellent. So let's start off with some good news here. What's in the mail packet, Mr. Bergen?
Yes, we have notification that the Littleton Police Department has been awarded state certification status under the accreditation program, and we have our Chief of Police, Matt King, here with us, and I was proud to be at the ceremony where the certification was awarded, and particularly proud that when Matt was promoted as chief 2 years ago, he said that following the accreditation process was going to be one of his goals. So this is an important step in that process. So,
Chief.
We've had our first step, full accreditation, hopefully by springtime. A lot of work from a lot of members of the department to get us to the status we are now, and still some work to be done, but. Especially, I know Mr. Carr very much knows what the accreditation processes are like. They're pretty grueling, and I've got, matter of fact, I've got some policies that will be coming to the board shortly for approval. But I'm real proud of the department. I'm real proud of the work that was done. So, these are extremely important, especially in this day and age, to have a policy that stands up to national, scrutiny. So we're definitely moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. And if I may, just to add on, I just took some highlights out of the update. 23 cities and towns have achieved certification. 66 have achieved full accreditation, and an additional 117 are in the self-assessment program. So we're definitely leading out on the pack, and certification is a self-initiated evaluation process that was undertaken. So again, fantastic job. Well done.
Thank you.
Okay.
next we have an update from Chief King just on staffing, and that the Chief reminded me that the board vote from earlier this year had asked him to come back by the end of September on his request for a second patrolman, second additional patrolman, and the chief would like to defer that until we hear whether that the grant from.
As you know, last spring we had this discussion, and board voted we come back in late September. COPS grant we applied for, we still haven't heard on, which is roughly any time now. So, better to discuss it after we know exactly where we stand financially. Made more sense to me.
Any questions, board?
Makes sense.
Thanks, Chief. Next is a letter that we and other communities received last week from the Lieutenant Governor announcing the second year of the Community Compact Cabinet Program. Good that they're doing it again. We made, I think, full use of it in year one. Bad news is that if you had a compact in year one, you cannot get one in year two. And I think that it is due in part to the fact that they need to use year two monies to make good on all of the year one obligations that they've had. There will be some limited grant opportunities available. There is a new efficiency and regionalization grant program, $2 million available on a competitive basis. There's a first grant round due at November 15th, another one that will be due in February. We'll take a look at, we're reaching out to a number of our regional groups that we're in to see if there's a competitive application we might be able to put together. So I'd look to be bringing that back to you. On your copy, I redacted the password, so I don't want any mischief to the public copies that are made. And then the other grant program is for an information technology competitive grant. We did not get one of those grants in year one, so we are eligible to apply for year two, but year two won't start, that opportunity won't start until let's see, it's in March of 2017, so we've got some time to work on that. We have a grant application for almost $400,000 that's been submitted under the Complete Streets Program Tier 2. I've included in here the letter of support that we got from our legislators. And then I've included in your packet the letter that the town was copied on from the Attorney General's office, finding that that the board has not violated the open meeting law as a result of the complaint that was brought about 7 times that we convened an executive session earlier this year. So
Fantastic.
that's what I've got.
Excellent. All right, that's through mail. Now we'll jump into town board joint meetings. So we've got, for the next 3 items, we've got about 40 minutes, okay, for building project updates, budget guidelines, and financial policies. All right, so 7:15, we have a joint meeting to fill the vacancy with Board of Health. So that's our goal for the next 3 items. All right, so let's start off with building project updates.
Right, and if I could, even though it says library building update, I think there's an update from the school committee and the library trustees regarding I have to say, I spent 20 minutes this afternoon watching the portion of the school committee meeting from a week ago where you discussed the declaring surplus, the proposed slope site, and then seeing what we could do to fix the this anomaly that the school committee is still in charge of this building and the selectmen are still in charge of an athletic field. So I know that Darrell was going to report from the school committee back to us, and maybe that would be a good place to start. Okay.
Yeah, catch us up to speed on how the
Like,
discussion.
what do you need?
So I think you redistributed the email that I had the school committee's proposal on trying to just take care of it all and clean it all up there. So I think this is a matter of course. A survey is required in order to actually cite the library. We can't release a parcel without some kind of legal definition of what it is. And our recommendation is while during the conduct of that survey, we survey what I identified as sort of some kind of imaginary line through the wetlands there to split the parcel into a town functions parcel and then a school committee, school parcel there. And then we would just vote to release, the parcel, I call it parcels 2 and 3 in the little drawing that I distributed there, which would be where the library would notionally go, and then the remainder of the land that the town is using for it. And I think that would get us into a better paperwork position in terms of any future use of the land and not necessarily relying on the 100-year-old deeds, which it's not clear these buildings were cited exactly in accordance with those deeds, because I don't know what standards were in effect then. So, you know, that was our recommendation back, and I don't know what timelines. We have to have whatever votes, but the school committee supports releasing the land for the for the library, so we're not, we will vote that as soon as we have something that's a legal definition that we could vote, but our recommendation is we just clean the whole thing up.
Would it be the case that there's a two-way cleanup that's necessary? As I mentioned, the school committee declares this part as surplus, and then the selectmen would declare the athletic field as surplus. Are you envisioning that both of those could happen at the same town meeting?
I think, I also don't know what the technicalities of
Yeah.
sequence would be. At a minimum, we request that the selectmen transfer to the school department
Right.
our school lot that our building is on.
I didn't know if it was like, if we were arranging a Checkpoint Charlie where the selectmen did that, but then the school committee released this building simultaneously.
Well, the concern that we have is, we have the 100-year-old deed, but I don't know where this building is cited on that deed and whether it's an accurate, we'd be releasing it based on unsurveyed as-built there, and so are we releasing the right piece, and then how much of the, what exactly does that entail relative to the parking lot and then the eventual siting of the thing. I also don't know, based on the overlays, how close the town offices parcel goes to what we call the tennis court site, because it's just a drawing, it's not a survey plan.
So it sounds like it would be fair to say that maybe we're not ready to do both of those things at once for this fall town meeting. And if we're not, and since we know that we will have to go to the spring town meeting with the slope site, with the town meeting vote on the slope site, would it make sense to bring all of those things and when we're ready
Yeah.
to do them all at once?
I
Would
think
that be
so.
agreeable?
The only part that was not clear to us, or clear to me when I was
Yeah.
relaying it to the school committee, is whether you had to have a vote from the school committee prior to the release of the application, or
Yes.
just that we have agreement in principle that this is not going to be a problem. So I wasn't clear what vote you actually needed, but I knew we weren't comfortable formally releasing the land without a survey.
Okay. And that's releasing the
Slope
slope
site.
site, yes. And I know that, or it's my understanding that, or maybe Mark or Sam can say whether the Mass Board of Library Commissioners needs a surveyed plan or not, but you're having that done in any event, is that correct? But just to answer Darrell's question, the only thing that would be needed is a school committee vote to declare that as surplus, with all those contingency, contingent upon getting the grant, contingent upon town meeting ultimately voting to transfer the property, and contingent upon town meeting coming up with the local share. So in the short term, the only thing that's needed is the school committee vote. And just my read of the update from Darrell was that if there were unresolved issues, rather than bring half of the loaf to the fall town meeting and the other half to the spring town meeting, why don't we just bring both of those plus the library all to the same meeting and just do it once? We've lived under these
Yeah.
conditions for, decades, so.
Yeah. From a practical perspective, us not doing, it didn't seem critical, it was just merely what formality you needed in order for the library
Yeah.
application.
I think we could promise not to do anything with the athletic fields between now and then.
Mark, did you want to say something?
So I do not believe the MBLC requires a survey. We have not started a survey. We got a quote for a survey, was all we did. We know roughly the parcel that we need. There's a couple, we know what the footprint is that we would require from
the architect. We don't know what the footprint we would require according to planning board regulations or things like that are.
Right.
So we can come up with the different footprints that we, the minimum we require, what, we're meeting with planning board in early October, so we can see what, any extra requirements they might have. We also don't know exactly, we could potentially extend the footprint farther down the slope site into the wetlands, because MBLC, we believe, will reimburse us for a certain cost to the land. So by making the library site bigger, right, we can get more money, right, potentially. We're not really sure where those lines are drawn on some of those things. So we know what we know roughly what we require, but we don't know what is in the best interest of releasing to the library.
So in terms of the immediate goals that we have for tonight are to decide what articles need to go in the warrant. And what I would suggest is that we don't need an article dealing with the total, town offices, middle school, Russell Street School for November. But we will need, and we'll want to fix that at the annual town meeting in May, when we will also be addressing this issue of that portion of the property that would be the slope site that town meeting would need to transfer to keep the grant hopes alive. And that we'll continue to work. I mean, what I'm hearing is we're still on the same page, we're still all heading in the same direction, but there are some things that we, want to make sure that we're all, that get done to satisfy our concerns that we have. And I know that we'll get from town council the, a formal opinion that you need, that releasing this building will not jeopardize, it will not trigger the need to repay any state funds, because the transfer predates any of those regulations or programs.
Yeah, we just wanted a formal opinion
Yeah.
on that. So at this point, you do not need any action from the school committee?
Not tonight, but between now and January, we
uh,
need, the library trustees will need the vote to declare as surplus that portion of this property that is designated, that is identified as the slope site. What I'm hearing is that there'll be at least, we will know more information on that soon, because the sketch plan, the general outline, is going to be reviewed by the planning board and others, and that's important guidance to have for drawing that line. And that will be happening over the course of the next month. So we'll all come back to, let me know, Kelly, when that meeting is with the school committee, and I'll be there to discuss that.
So we probably will not have a formal survey done. We probably will have more like GIS coordinate type things. So
Because it's $10,000 for, that you don't need to incur.
it's
Yeah.
$10,000, well, it's roughly $10,000 for the entire site, right? To clean up both lots. So we'd have to figure out as a town what we want to do between those, the school and the town and the library, how those play out, right? Or if it's really required.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. Any other updates on library? Comments, questions for library? Okay, very good.
Just thank you to Darrell, the school committee, and
Yeah.
the superintendent.
Good call.
Diligence, appreciate it.
All right, next up, alumni?
We've got Greg Carell, our architect for the fire station, that could speak.
Do fire? Sure.
Greg had just loaded some, I'll start with the site plan. Welcome back.
Okay.
Pitch.
All right, well, this is the site plan. Let me before I begin. Right now, we're in the heart of working drawings, construction documents on the project. We've been preparing the drawings and specifications that are going to be needed to bid and build the project. So what you're seeing here, this happens to be a colored up version, but what you're seeing here are the product of that effort. So they're not really geared towards quote-unquote presentation, but they are the technical documents that are going to be used. As you can see, this is the site plan. The Foster Street is along the right-hand side. The front of the building, I'm sure you're all familiar pretty much with this. We have staff parking behind the building. We have some visitor parking right off Foster Street, which is in a protected area so that it doesn't interfere with apparatus exiting the garage. We've accommodated basically an ability to drive all the way around the station, and we've also been able to accommodate neighbor access to the, on the bottom side of the sheet to the north. Permitting is being initiated, and we hope to have all the permitting done probably right around the time of town meeting. A little bit of a tailwind, we'll be able to do that.
And we're, yeah.
So, previously, there was a lot more parking. Is this has something changed with the parking?
The parking configuration has changed, the numbers haven't changed that much. I think we're at 47.
I think there's 47 now. So it's actually a couple more than what we originally had on there.
Okay.
What we ran into was problems with the impervious surfaces had exceeded the existing space right now. So we actually created a little bit more green space on here and had to change some of the parking as well.
So is that just based on the town bylaw or the impervious?
Yeah, it's basically conservation, it's how much, it's a matter of recharging.
There's no special permitting we can do for trying to get more parking?
Percentage coverage?
Yeah, that's pretty
Yeah,
much.
we're limited on coverage, and actually, you can see that we're pretty much maxed out. There's not a whole lot more pavement we can actually put on the site.
I'm guessing that maybe along the neighbor's access, that might have been. at
What
one
is
point in
that?
time
That was
laid
my
out
next
parking.
question.
We actually increased that. So on the bottom right side there, we,
What brought that on? Give me a little history on that, that's new.
with the change of the facility, the layout, the garage is basically on the left side of your screen now. And so the membership, all of the responders will be parking on the left side and entering in through that side of the building. They'd no longer be entering in through the old section where the garage is. That's going to become office space now. So their best access is on the other side of the building. So we had some issues with sight lines and one of the abutters, and we also needed to decrease our impervious surfaces. So we took that space and increased the lawn, the grass area on that, along their driveway. The driveway actually enters into our parking lot. And so by extending the grass out, it gives a better visual for people coming in and out of that driveway. And it allows us to go in and out, two-way traffic.
Is
So
that there now too?
yes, yeah, it's been there forever, since the house was built.
Gotcha.
And with there's parking there now, but even now, it's not a good situation. Traffic and parking it's in conflict. And it will be even worse at this point because there's going to be a lot more vehicular traffic, there's going to be a lot more in and out of the site. We have a nice safe place to put traffic now, to put parking now for the staff, and it gets that off the side of the building, which it really should have been in the first place. It's always been kind of shoehorned in there.
Thank you.
And you're still on schedule for
sorry.
bid opening on October 20th?
Is there a net gain or loss of parking spaces? And if somebody said that, I
Additional.
didn't hear.
There's more.
Uh,
There's more.
How many? Ballpark?
Currently, there are 20 spaces on the side of the building that are available for the public. And this now, total, including the fire station parking, is, I believe it's about 47.
27?
47.
47, okay, thank you.
Can I ask her? Are the people visiting Fay Park expected to park behind the fire station now rather than next to it?
That's correct. Yep.
Sorry, I'll jump in with one more question. So, I can't, you may have already taken account of it. I think last year we relocated the cross-country course to cut across the back of is that green spot big enough?
Actually,
Is that there, or?
if you look at, it's kind of tough to see, but on the very left side on the green, the cross-country trail is actually incorporated into the
Oh, that's not a
design.
contour line?
No.
Okay. Okay.
That is the trail.
Okay, thank you. I thought it was a contour line, so. Thank you.
And the only question I had was just we're still on track for the bid opening, GC bid opening on the 25th of October. That's correct. Because we have our deadline of the 27th of October for getting the voter information out. So
That's
great.
correct. This will hit the street on Thursday of this week.
Great.
So, and sub bids will be due on the 18th, general bids will be due on the 25th.
Elevations.
You want to see elevations? Find those. Oh, there it is, okay.
We have floor plans and elevations. These are the rear elevations of the building. This is, the one at the top is facing the parking, and the one at the bottom is facing that roadway that goes along by the neighbors. You can see that in this drawing here, the lower drawing, that's the existing apparatus garage with the cupola on the roof in front, and then there's the main building behind it. What you see there with the vertical lines, that's the new apparatus garage. And that's an engineered, pre-engineered steel building that we're using. And on this side of the building and in the very back, it is clad in the conventional, ribbed steel skin. It's not printing very well, but you can see there's this big black line up above on the upper drawing. That's actually a railing, and that's on top of the carport, and that's part of the training facilities that are being provided. We have basically a training balcony, and this tower over on the left-hand side has a steel stair inside of it, and it can be used for training, for hose training, where you have a dry standpipe that's going in there. It's pretty much waterproof surfaces that are going in there. I think we may have mentioned it at the last meeting, one of the features the chief was looking for, we have a steel grate on the basically the second floor that has a removable, if you will, manhole cover in it, so that the department can do concealed space rescue training and actually be going through a hole in the second floor to people that are being rescued from the first floor, and it's all open so everybody can see how it's done, and it becomes a real good training feature. Look at the other elevation to the front end.
We actually, on that, for the two rear views, decided to stay with the steel skin, just for cost benefit. Keeps the project under 9, which is key. It doesn't affect the view as you're driving by to see the rest of the elevation.
Now here's the front of the building. Obviously, you recognize the front of the station. And the existing apparatus garage on the left is basically staying the way it is. That's going to be retained for just the chief's car and maybe another vehicle. So it's going to be a foreshortened garage, so that's a separate garage from the apparatus. Behind it will be the administration area. We're cleaning up the brick and the trim that's on the front of the building. You can see on the right-hand side of that upper elevation, in the lower part of it, that's the addition for the meeting room, and then, of course, the staff quarters and exercise room and so forth behind it. And then the other elevation is the appearance of the building at the front apparatus room overhead doors. Would point out that we're showing fully glazed overhead doors, something similar to what you have on the station now. We do have an alternate. It turns out we carried it as an alternate because they are more expensive, but we're going to see how the prices come in for basically big bifold doors that go on those openings. They're a better door, they're less prone to wearing out. There are a lot of advantages to using them, but they are considerably more expensive than these. So if the money allows, we will have those instead.
Some of the pros to those are, over the years, on many occasions, the doors don't go quite all the way up, or they go up and they bounce back down a little bit. As the apparatus are pulling out, they clean off the bottom panels of the doors, damage the tracks, damage the apparatus, things like that. So there's the new style that is out there, much quicker, more efficient, much less apt to have damage of that nature.
But you need more clearance, right? Are they like barn doors, or do they retract back?
Nope, it's a bifold door, it just opens to each side.
So those are the exterior views. Did you want to look at the floor plans, or
Is,
it's up to you?
yeah, we're
done.
Yeah, we're done.
Let me just say that nothing's really changed. I mean, all of this that you're looking at now is what you have been seeing now for some months. This is just the technical end of it.
Very good.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, please. All right, alumni fields.
So alumni fields, PMBC selected Gale Associates. The contract is in final, negotiations are done, the contract is in final iterations between Gale's council and our council. And doing a kickoff meeting Wednesday evening at the police station at 7:30 PM with Gale Associates, open to the public. So if you have any questions, or if you want to come out and meet the designer, he'll have some renderings there, which will be on display, some easels. And, the hope and plan is to be able to get to town meeting with a number, but that remains to be seen.
Okay, and I know we'll have that conversation in a little bit as well, what number we want to. Okay,
I have a question on that. Chuck, the process is gonna have bid documents and be able to do like the fire station, get the documents out to actually review and have a contract in place by November?
Probably not.
No?
We'll be working off of construction estimates. Gale Associates has their own cost estimator, so the number is gonna be pretty tight, and
And they do these things all over the state, right?
absolutely, yeah. So,
So their numbers are pretty good?
the numbers are, yeah.
Are they, are there, what would be nice to know is how many fields they're working on right now, and like to get their latest numbers.
How many other projects?
Right.
Okay, yeah, so John Perry is the engineer that's gonna be here on Wednesday night. I think he's gonna bring at least one other individual from Gale Associates. I can't answer those questions for you. I reached out to 11 different projects that they're either in progress with or have recently finished up. And I didn't reach, there were more on the resume within the last 18 months.
Gotcha.
So there's a number of projects that they've worked on, both synthetic and natural grass. So, an opportunity for people to come out and get some questions answered and see some of their preliminary designs.
So the article that goes in the warrant for both, or the articles, I should say, for both the fire station and alumni field, neither one would have a dollar amount in it. In the case of the fire station, we're looking at plugging in the number that is based on the bids that are open on the 25th.
Right.
And so it sounds like if you're going forward with the alumni field, since we won't have bids in hand, that it would have to be based on whatever the
Construction
best estimate is as
Construction
of that
estimates.
time. I think all of that mitigates towards the selectmen having a meeting sometime after the 25th and before the 27th, how about the 26th? So that we can see what the bids are for the fire station. We know we're gonna be working on all of those projects right up until deadline, for getting the voter information out. So either the 25th either the 26th or the 27th, maybe the Wednesday or Thursday. I think it'd be well to think about having a special meeting just to finalize what your recommendations are that appear in the voter information.
Isn't Thursday too late?
No, well,
It's
there's.
closed.
I can send, I went to a FinCom meeting once, it was a Tuesday deadline, and I emailed it before I went home, so they got it at like 10 o'clock that night, so we can do that again, so.
All right, well, let's see who's available and just
Yeah.
double check, but yeah, that sounds good. Let's do that.
Great.
Okay, very good. Anything else on alumni?
And since Joe's here, there is another matter that I foolishly put later in the agenda, but it's Joe's, it's the PMBC's project. We're delighted to see it.
So this is
And it's a
4E?
settlement, yeah, this is 4E, settlement agreement for new track system. And this is the legal document by which we get a new track for nothing. So
Fantastic.
forget that.
Thank you for taking me early. For those who aren't aware, we had a problem with the track. It took us a little while, but we got the manufacturer to agree to replace the track free of charge.
It's fantastic.
However, we have to sign a settlement agreement, all of which has been approved by legal. And basically, when you read the agreement, you'll see also, we've got an additional we've got 2 years warranty on it.
Great.
And right now, it looks like it'll be done in about 3 weeks. We've had a little problem with them taking off the top part of the asphalt. It came off pretty easy, except for one corner, they had to bring in another piece of equipment to take it off. So all the, what's going into the track is on its way in now, and they committed to a 2.5 to 3 week timeframe. And that's
Great.
it.
Thank you, Jim. That is,
Just one question there,
Yeah.
Joe, when does the warranty start clicking? As soon as we accept the project?
And we accept it,
Okay.
not until we accept it.
Okay.
And we've got enough people who want to inspect it.
Yeah, sure. Joe, the 2-year warranty they're giving us, is that just with the remainder of the warranty that we would have had this
We've
track
used
not
up-
failed?
We've basically used up almost all our warranty.
Yeah, okay,
All right, it's a 5-year warranty, and we're about 4.5
right.
years
Perfect.
into it.
great.
So that's why I went back and asked for additional warranty. I asked for 5, but we got 2.
I'm sure you did.
Good job. Good job.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank
Okay?
you.
Thank you. Well done.
Thank you very much.
Look for a motion.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the settlement agreement between the town, the Cape and Island Corporation doing business as Cape and Island Tennis and Track, and California Products Corporation doing business as California Sports Services, wherein the town will receive a new track system at Russell Street School in exchange for an agreement not to pursue a claim against Cape and Island Corporation or California Products Corporation for the original track system that was installed in 2012, and authorize the town administrator to execute the settlement agreement on behalf of the town.
So moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
again.
Thank you, Joe.
Let me know when it's
Thanks, Joe.
Sure will.
All right, very good. That brings us to 2B, and as a reminder, at 7:15, we do need to do our joint meeting to fill the vacancy with Board of Health. So maybe we get through 2B and then go to 2D. Great. All right, Bonnie.
I'll be quick. Basically, it's that time of the year again where we're starting to prepare for the fiscal 2018 operating budget. So we need to set the directive for the departments to submit their budgets. This is typically what we do annually. It is the same process that we did last year. I'm just recommending that we start with a level staffing or required services budget, which means no additional services, no new staff. Just kind of roll your budget over and see, where you land for next year. Incorporate any step increases and the 2% cost of living salary schedule that has been agreed for the town unions, and include that also for the non-union bylaw employees. Same as last year, I would recommend that we do a mission budget. It was very helpful last year to at least be able to target some increases and be very careful and thoughtful about it. But I'd ask that the departments submit their budgets with what they feel is best meeting the needs of the community. Last year we did this and we were able to identify some targeted increases for school staffing at 2 FTE, highway at 1 FTE or full-time equivalent, police patrol staffing at 1, and some additional hours for the town clerk, veterans agent, and some IT expenses to address some structural changes within the department. That'll be able to, give the board some ability to review the requests in detail. In looking at the budget right now, I don't know, that we'll be able to incorporate any additional staffing or any changes. I did roll the budget over for the next 5 years, and I'll kind of go through what the assumptions are that I'm using. It's a fluid document, it will change many times.
Can I ask you one question if I may, Madam Chair? The couple reorganizations that we had talked about, both in Town Hall and over at the highway, are they incorporated in your projections?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So for the next 5 years, basically what we did is I've looked through the revenues from the last 5 to 10 years, and looking at what we have in the pipeline for building projects, for new growth, and I've come up with a couple of different assumptions, but basically from fiscal 18 to 22, the revenue assumptions that I'm using is a 4.23% increase in local receipts for fiscal 18. The primary driver is excise. We pushed excise up this year. I think we're going to exceed it, so we'll be able to push it up again next year. That can be attributed to newer vehicles and just more people in town. I did kind of hold off a little bit and hedge in 19 to 22 at a 1% increase in those years, just to see kind of, we have a lot in progress right now, particularly with room excise and meal excise. So those are changing numbers. They're kind of spiking right now. I have a 1% growth factor in both school and municipal state aid. These numbers have been flat the last few years, small increases, so I think holding it at the 1% is probably the smart thing to start. New growth estimates, $689,000 for new growth in fiscal 18, $565,000 in 19, and $300,000 in fiscal 20 to 22, which was kind of what our normal was several years ago before we saw these new housing projects come online. And again, we're monitoring those pretty much every quarter with updates with the building department and the assessors. So, expenses. What I did is 3.36% average growth in town department budgets, which is primarily driven by wages. Step and COLA, 2% calculated for 18, but 0 in 19 through 22 because we haven't had any negotiations for those periods. 3.4% average increase in the school appropriation, which is made up of a 4% increase in fiscal 18 and 3.25 in 19 through 22. That's a typo, sorry. And 11.4% average growth in fringe or employee benefit costs, which is health insurance. Health insurance increased by just over 12% last year, so this number may need to be tweaked, but we're going to monitor it. So if I use these assumptions, there's deficits in starting in fiscal 18 at $285,000 and continue through 22 at about $2.5 million. I will say $285,000 is a relatively small deficit at this point in the budget process. We've seen some larger ones in previous years. So it's one that I feel is something that we can strive to manage. Capital planning. Preliminary estimates for the next fiscal year indicate that we'll have about $2.5 million available for funding capital or other one-time expenditures. About $1.3 million coming through the accumulated debt service reductions and financial policy adjustments, and about $1.1 million coming from undesignated fund balance, which is what we try and regenerate every year to use towards capital. This fiscal year, we funded just shy of $2.7 million in capital one-time spending requests. And then additionally, we transferred about $2.5 million to the capital stabilization fund for future use. Any future debt that as it gets retired, we again don't let it go to the operating budget. We reserve it for new debt or new capital items to keep the plan sustainable. Also in the worksheets, the fire station debt is included in there, so we can incorporate that coming on, starting in fiscal 18 and forward. It does show that the debt service amounts are funded inside the levy limit. So even though, if whether there is a debt exclusion override vote taken or not, I know that it was recommended by the Finance Committee at their last meeting, but it will be funded inside the levy limit in these worksheets. The other thing that I included as an assumption, which, may or may not be realized, is the withdrawal of about $2.3 million from capital stabilization for the reconstruction and renovation to Alumni Field, just to put it into the worksheets to see where that would flow. So identifying the board's long-term priorities are going to be critical, kind of going through the next few weeks, and figuring out what is the priority for capital and how do we get there. So I would, if there are concerns with the budget directive, and looking at the level staffing or required services and then a mission budget, we can incorporate any changes that you might want to see in that.
Bonnie, I just had one question. Sure. And maybe it's one I should know, but on the worksheet with all the numbers on it.
Yeah.
On other available funds from 17 to 18, we go down by 1.1 million. What was that decrease, other available funds?
Those are typically revolving accounts that are used to offset some debt service.
Okay.
So as the debt service gets paid down, those funds are not used to offset the debt service. A good example is the cell tower revenues that are used to offset the Prouty and those acquisitions. There is also an MSBA payment that comes in that way for Shaker Lane, which will be disappearing in the next few years also.
Okay, thanks. Any questions, board?
I've got a few. Thank you, Bonnie. Any chance we can get this digitally with the assumptions, so just we can plan that? And just, to point out one of the obvious things, Jim asked a question about the proposed new position and the other voted engineer's position, which is proposed to be repurposed as a director of public works. I mean, the town hasn't voted them yet. We haven't even voted to put that warrant article on the budget. I wonder why they would be assumed into the base budget rather than having to, contest for that new money the same as the schools would or anyone else.
The finance and administration costs are not incorporated in here, I should clarify. The highway, head of the highway department was put into the 16 budget and rolled forward.
Okay, that has logic to
Yes.
it because it was already voted, at least the engineer's position was there, and they might assume there's a differential, but it's not probably significant enough to throw off the numbers. Okay.
Yep.
I guess that's it. I mean, the last point I'll make is terrific that we see these modest deficits projected, and it's a good reminder that we look at projected deficits in these sorts of presentations every year, and I don't make light of that, but I think that we ought to keep it in mind when we're looking at long-term projections that, we built in a lot of conservatism in a lot of the assumptions, and that's a good thing, but it's also a reminder that these things do change, because we haven't yet run into one of those deficits yet, fortunately.
So just
Yeah.
add on to
We're having a pass. Can't see who's talking, sorry.
I'm just speaking.
It's just the finance committee.
So
Just the
just
finance committee getting excited when people say we've never seen a deficit.
Yeah.
Well, I was hoping you'd get excited when we were talking about adding a $90,000 position without having any public process for it.
Well, we haven't been asked about that.
Okay, all right.
And that's going to be part of our discussion.
Sure. So just to piggyback on what Paul said, I think, if we can get it electronically with the assumptions and, as far as the administrative changes, this board has had 2 or 3 discussions at 2 or 3 different meetings talking about it. I think the majority of the board has spoken and said this board supports it. So I'd like to see those assumptions also moving forward. That's all I have.
Yeah, sure. I don't see any issue with that. We've got both of those topics coming up. Anything else?
Good. But I like the level funding, level staffing.
Yeah. absolutely. Good job, honey. Any questions for Bonnie from Com? And then we have the budget calendar, which we are at the beginning of. So we're here September 26th at step 2 of 31.
12 steps.
Okay, that's good guidance for us. Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you.
Oh, and I see we're 5 minutes late for our
Motion.
joint
Let
appointment.
me make the motion.
We get a motion?
Please. Oh, sorry.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to request department budget scenarios be prepared for FY '20.
So do that.
Oh, go ahead.
So this says joint meeting with Finance School Committee. Do they have any comments on?
Yeah, right.
Any of the numbers that we?
This is a good question.
Any comments from finance, FinCom, or school committee?
On the proposed budget goals,
Guidelines.
guidelines.
I think you had recognized in the motion that we have a required services budget that we have to submit, which may or may not be level staff. And I think the motion is written in the thing, took care of that.
Give you a day.
We haven't reviewed it as a committee, we meet on the 11th, but it seems reasonable. But again, we haven't discussed it as a committee, and we'll let you know what the committee's feeling is at that point.
No problem, good catch. I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to request department budget scenarios be prepared in FY 2018, mindful of the Selectmen's adopted goals. A, level staffing / required services budget prepared for the same staffing or / required service levels as 2017, inclusive of increases to support only any steps and salary schedule adjustments that may be contractually due, with a 2% salary schedule adjustment projected for non-union town employees' expenses to be level funded at the FY 2017 amount. B, mission budget prepared with staffing levels as the department head / appointing authority feels necessary to provide sufficient services to the community. Any enhanced staffing or expenses levels must be submitted with full documentation justifying why the increase is necessary and the expected outcome of the increased services. In parentheses, increased services, decreased public safety incidents, additional revenues generated, etc.
Fully second that. Just,
Go ahead.
does this cover, that personnel had proposed any of minimum wage additions? So we covered, do we need to add that to this, or?
I can certainly,
Oh, for the park and rec, you mean?
yeah, I mean, they're gonna be on the fall warrant anyway. so-
It will, yeah, the amendments that we're making in the special town meeting to go to $11
Yeah.
per hour state minimum, that we will have adjusted the fiscal 2016 budget.
Right.
So
The
we'll
2017 budget, rather.
So it'll help us to stay within the
include
guidelines?
11.
Okay, that's all I wanted to make sure.
Yeah, so we would include that.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Good job, Bonnie.
Great, thank you all.
All right, because we had a 7:15 joint meeting with Board of Health to fill a vacancy on Board of Health, I'd like to skip to that to D. Let's see, we've got Gino, we've got Brad, we've got, who else we got?
All four of them.
Hey, well done.
Hiding in the back there.
Now it's a party.
The director's Gino, where do we sit? Gotta open the meeting.
I can break out the guest chairs.
Just sit on the grown-up table.
Welcome, welcome. All right, and we have 3 candidates, so we'll ask them to come up maybe to the front as well. The candidates, if you want to come up to the front 3, it's easier for us to see you and ask questions. Yeah,
Okay,
that'd be
yeah,
great, then we,
Can you hold up a second? We have to open up our meeting.
please
Are you
do.
done? Because, Madam Chairman, okay, Jennifer is only Chairman of the Board of Health, and I have my board members right here.
Excellent.
It's official now.
Official?
The meeting's open.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Chairman.
Happy?
Yep.
Okay, we only have 2 of the 3 applicants, is that right?
Do we not have a third?
We do have 3, so.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. Oh, no, that's Alan. We know Alan. All right, well, we can start with you 2, and then that'll be tough if we can't see the third for the third applicant. So there's, let's see, 9 of us, and if we all ask them all a question, we could be here for quite a while. So just keep that in mind. Let's try to get the most information out of them in the most efficient way possible. All right, so let's see, who's first here? We'll just go with whoever's first in the packet. George.
George, you gotta state your name and your address and everything.
Name, address,
The tale of two
tell us a little
chairs.
bit about yourself.
Still want to be on that committee, George?
My name's George Kenny. I live on 4 James Drive in Littleton. Lived there about 3 years now. Originally grew up in Hudson. Had a home, lived in Bolton for 20 some odd years. I basically been in the property management business most of my career. I have a background of working relationships with the Board of Health through the Bolton Fair for 33 years, as Vice President of the Bolton Fair. And managed and ran the fair, managed food concessions, bathroom facilities, and all that. I worked closely with Neshoba Boards of Health for many years with the Bolton Fair. I had blueprint reading. I have a background with my property management end of it with Title V installations of pressure dowsing systems. I've managed and maintained water treatment plants on a small end, not large ones. Not sure any other questions you might have for me.
It's great. I'm sure there will be questions. All right, I know Jim's question. I know what it is. Why do you want to apply for Board of Health?
Well, I've stated this before, it's like, I've been involved with the fair for so many years, and to me, that was a 24/7 job, 365 days a year. Very committed to anything I get involved with. Like to serve my community. I always thought being involved with the fair, you're serving all kinds of people, not just the towns, but all town organizations and that. So I've always been a give-back kind of person. I've been away from that now. I left in 2009. Thought that the amount of years I had in there was enough to try to come back to a normal life. But with that said, I would like to be involved in something within the community. And when I heard that there was an opportunity with an opening for the board, I kind of thought that was, a good time to maybe try to step in. As far as commitment and involvement, it is so much on a smaller scale than, what I'm used to, so I'm not concerned that I can't handle it or can't meet the commitment, or that, I'm not here for the, I would be here for the long haul. So,
Certainly is an active, busy board, for
Yeah.
sure. Okay, board members, any
and I'm
questions?
used to that.
Anything you want to ask?
Just, the work of the Board of Health is largely oversight and approval of residential, septic systems. I wonder if you have an opinion of the, what the town has been facing, what the board's been doing, or whether you have any impression of that going into the position.
Well, some of my impression, I've been to a couple of meetings and I see that, you have different aspects of it. You're gonna have new development and construction, that would be one end of it. The other is I see that you seem to go through challenges with a lot of smaller residents in and around the area that, are fighting with failed systems and, trying to come up with things that meet Title V and fit in and work for everybody. So, I'd be very much, a workable kind of guy, follow the guidelines of Title V, try to work with the people in the town, I'm open to all that.
Board members, any other questions?
I'll ask one. So this is an elected position where there's been a vacancy where somebody's resigned.
Correct.
And the position, is anyone else, so it's going to be, I'm going to ask the same question. So is this something that you would, in a couple of years when this term expires, actually it'll be next May,
Next May.
for the remaining 2 years of the term, are you willing and open to run for the seat?
Absolutely. I, take this commitment seriously and, I'm not looking for it to be a short-term commitment. I'm looking to get involved and try to help the best I can and do it for a long time.
Good. Any other questions?
To follow up on what Mr. Glavy was saying, there have been times in the past, the old boards of health, I think, have had individuals on that board that would try to regulate different types of, or they might not like a certain system, so they're not, even though it might be Title V approved, or they may want to limit a size of a building or something. I guess my question is to you is, would you just go by Title V guidelines, or would you want to make guidelines even stronger?
I would be looking to try to follow the Title V guidelines, and I'd look for the leadership of the Neshoba Boards of Health on, their opinion and input to this particular situation that it might be dealt with. But I'd be open to, I'd be open to the input of what's coming in, and, also trying to follow the guidelines of Title V. I wouldn't be trying to make my own regulations up into it, if that's what your question is.
All right, guys, any other questions? I stole Jim's questions. All right, Board of Health, any questions for?
All I can say is he's been to a couple meetings, and we met him and already spoken to him, which I think is largely why this board's silent.
Okay, you've had your chance. All right, very good.
I just want to ask, George, is it, the 90% of our work is septic systems, Title V and, that type of stuff. But we also get into wells and other things of that nature. I'm just curious how deep your knowledge is of Title V, because I think that would be a great asset to the board.
Well, the last I've really dealt with a lot of the Title V's would have been a few years ago. I was very up to speed with, a lot of the systems at that time, and I know the regulations change through, through the different years. So, I would get more involved with, reading on the regulations and getting up to speed with them to try to follow them.
Thank you.
Good. Any other questions? All right, thank you very much. Up next, Erin Healy. Erin. All right, same thing, tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
I live in Lincoln Drive. I've been in Littleton for 17 years, raising 2 children. And my professional career is in environmental science. I'm a licensed professional geologist in New Hampshire. Massachusetts doesn't have a license. As far as relevant experience for the board, he just said that we deal with septic systems and water wells, which have to do with, in the case of a septic system, injection of potentially contaminants, chemical, and pathogens into the groundwater system. And that's what I've been doing for 25 years as an environmental consultant. Also dealing with hydrogeology and the way groundwater flows and interacts with surface water. In addition, it's the Board of Health, so from a health perspective, I've done human health risk assessments and looked at both pathogens and bacteria and viral things, and also chemistry, and looked at the impacts on human health and ecological systems. I've also been the chair of the Sustainability Committee for the last few years, and I think that we've done a pretty good job balancing the interests of social and economic and environmental, not looking at environmental stovepiped, but really balancing it with what the community needs and what would benefit us as a whole, socially and economically, along with environmentally. I don't have any conflict of interest. I have no personal stake in what happens as far as septic system goes. I have experience looking at blueprints and plans and specifications, working with engineers. And part of being an environmental consultant, or a huge part, is regulatory compliance. I was a paralegal for a couple of years in Boston. And I'm used to looking at regulations. I've looked at Title V. I'm a believer in there's laws and strict compliance with the law. And I'd like to see that happen. I think I could bring an objective opinion to the board as far as from a technical perspective and also regulatory.
All right, everyone let Jim ask the first question.
Why would you want to get on the Board of Health?
Because I think my experience is directly relevant to the Board of Health. And I live in the Long Lake area. There's a lot of pressure there. I feel like there needs to be, as you just said, a balance between economic and social, and that includes looking at the regulations and making sure that we're not penalizing property owners there, but also keeping an eye on environmental compliance and what's important to our community.
Yes.
So you live in the Long Lake area, and there's been a lot of tension in that neighborhood around some of the development that's going on. The Board of Health has taken some criticism of that. We've heard complaints about retaining walls, we've heard complaints about the size of houses going on lots. And frankly, my opinion goes really on Board of Health issues, those are more zoning issues. And I guess I'd like to hear your opinion on that as a resident and a potential board member.
Again, I think that you have to look at the regulation and make sure there's compliance with it, and that's what
Right, but do you think it's appropriate for the Board of Health to regulate those issues or another board?
Only if it's under purview of the regulatory purview, basically. So I would have to look at the regulations strictly. If it's not in there, then no.
Do you think it should be in there?
Do I think it should be in there?
For Board of Health?
I'm sorry to say this, but I don't know the answer to that. I'd have to really look at the regulation, and I'm sorry, I haven't looked at that aspect of it. I can tell you I would be objective about it.
Yes.
All right, so Aaron, just sort of follow up, you said that you're a believer in being in compliance and strict compliance of the regulations, but I mean, 90% of 90% of what we do actually is dealing with variances and understanding if we should grant the variance based on the recommendation and the guidance of the health agent. So there is some wiggle in there, otherwise there wouldn't necessarily be a need to have it. So what's your view on variances and how you evaluate them?
I guess you'd have to look at the reason that we have variances. And to tell you the truth, I haven't looked at the legal basis for a variance, and I would look at the language behind that and then talk to you guys about that. I think that, personally, I think that you'd have to look at how the community feels about that and how the economy's going to be impacted by whether the variance is given or not. And my personal opinion is that if somebody's a property owner, and I've had friends who are, and had to comply with the regulations that were in place at the time they sold their property. And I think possibly over-engineered their system. If you're asking about a variance, that would be a case where I would look at a variance. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, but yeah. Just questioning the objectiveness and the case-by-case approach of it as opposed to a blanket statement of
Oh, okay, yeah.
guidance and that's it. Okay.
Well, I know that variances are a part of what you do.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, if I can interject.
Sure.
I understand you guys had some conversation with the other, Mr. Kenny. I would rather see, if you guys are going to be asking a question of Ms. Healy, that you ask the other candidate the same questions.
Well, that's what I thought you guys were gonna do, but you didn't do it.
Sorry, I let you guys go first. Sorry. I shook it up on you there.
Now, I have a question of Aaron.
Actually, Peter, just to interject, Mr. Mitchell jumped in with that question.
Okay.
We hadn't gone yet. This is a joint meeting, so as far as structure is concerned.
I had my hand raised, it's called on by the chair.
Yes, I did. I went out of sync there, that is true.
Tino, can you keep control of this thing?
But,
You're doing a good job.
but we'd already done the
I'll recommend
questions
them
for
later.
one, so do we want to go back now and just ask, do you guys remember what those questions were? And we could ask George then as well, and then we continue on, just to get that done? Fair enough?
I think it's fair.
Okay, do you remember?
Yeah, I just disagree, frankly. We have people coming with different perspectives. One person lives in a neighborhood where it's been, and I don't feel we should have to ask everybody the same questions. They're tailored to everybody's experience and background, and I don't agree that we should have to ask everybody the same question.
I feel we should. We always have in the past, so it's precedent from us.
If that's SOP for this group, I'm happy to, and I'm happy to oppose it, but I'm not picking on anybody. I just looked at somebody who lived in that neighborhood.
Sure,
and-
sure.
You're in an autonomous board that's elected by the town people. We have no control.
Okay.
Back to asking questions?
Yes. Okay, Peter, go.
Well, I was, like to ask Aaron on, she talks about, it seems like she has the feeling that the present board is not being compliant with Title V. Is there a
No, I
concern
never
with
said that. I didn't mean to convey that.
No, I may have misunderstood it too,
Okay.
so.
Yeah.
I didn't hear that either.
Okay. All right. Our board, what questions might we have?
I think my question actually kind of already got asked by Brad, so I'm going to ask another one, which is off the wall. Well, it's not off the wall, just it's inapplicable to both candidates. I know you'd run for the Board of Health in the past, so you have you sustain your interest. And I wonder whether you learned anything during that campaign that might have informed your approach to the Board of Health position, interaction with the people, et cetera.
I lost by, I think, 50 votes. I didn't really campaign. And,
I just mean your interaction, not like
Yeah,
you
I
learned
know.
from losing or anything, that's all. Believe me, I've been there.
Okay, I'll tell you. I think that I would like to see somebody on Board of Health with a technical background in what the Board of Health is dealing with. That's one thing I took away. I didn't, your question is interacting with the public and going around door to door and talking to people, and I just didn't do that much of it. But I would say that I did have some people, I presented at a couple of forums and people approached me afterwards. And I got a positive reaction. And there were 2 candidates who were technically very qualified. And, but I think that's what I took away, if that's the answer to your question.
Sure, thank you.
My question was relative to the election, and so the election would be in May. If you were to be appointed this evening, would you
Yeah,
run
well,
for the
I'm
seat?
doing it now, so sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
As far as giving back to the community, the reason I'm doing it is I feel compelled. Because I see that you guys put a lot of time in, kind of shame me into it, to tell you the truth. So, because I feel like my background is applicable and it's something that's relevant to my immediate community and the larger Littleton community and the greater rural community, so that's why I do.
Very good. Any other questions?
No, Secretary answered what I was concerned about, and one of the questions they asked answered my concern.
Okay, very good. Good. All right, Brian DeVoe. Is Brian here? Brian DeVoe, okay. All right, unfortunately. he
All
couldn't
3 were
make it.
invited, and by me, by email.
Yeah,
It was in the posting that you were to be interviewed tonight.
Right.
in the posting itself, okay. Because it is tough, I mean, obviously, if you can't speak with someone, it's hard to assess them, if you will, but it was in the posting, and here we are. All right, so remind me, Keith, of this process now. We've got to interview both candidates, it's a joint appointment. How do we go about this?
Well, what often you do is someone could make a motion, and you could see if you get a majority of 9.
Okay.
So, or you can discuss, and people can identify who they would be inclined to vote for of the 2, and then you take the motion. So,
Do you know how you want to proceed?
Okay.
Do you know how you
Oh.
want to proceed?
Do you know, any thoughts on how you'd like to proceed?
I met both of them previously when she was running, so I can entertain a motion if it's okay.
Okay,
All right.
same? Yeah.
Or discussion before a
Yeah,
motion?
discussion before a motion. And maybe one thing I'd say is, thank you both for applying, and, anytime someone says they want to give back to our town, that's fantastic, it's an important role, so thank you. And I hope that no matter what happens, if you don't get appointed, keep trying, keep finding other boards where you might, and,
Absolutely.
you'll find a place, we'll find a place. Okay, discussion, boards.
I think, you wanna go, Peter? Go ahead.
Well, I think personally, with my experience on the board and having, because it takes like a year or 2 to really get on to things. It's a technical job. And we have 2 very good candidates, but I kind of tend to favor George because of his background with Title V, and I think that's an important thing. That's a personal opinion.
Okay, very good.
I think both candidates are excellent. I think they both do fine with the job. I'm going to wait and see more discussion because I'm having trouble choosing, but I think both are well qualified and would be an asset to the board, so.
Okay, great.
So, I don't know if this is a fair question or not, but I'll throw it out to you guys, because in the year I've been doing this, I've not had any need or opportunity to interact with you guys. Is there specific qualifications, things you guys look for that would be helpful in interacting with us, or members of the Board of Health, with the Board of Selectmen?
So to Jimmy's point, this is, you're elected by
Yeah.
You're elected
the
by
people,
voters.
so we,
But we do have interaction.
we could put our
We do have
stamp on it.
interaction, that's what I'm saying, I get that.
You get questions from the public, and, I mean,
Yeah.
folks have sent me emails, can you answer this, and that sort of thing.
Because I see significant pluses for both candidates, so on an appointment basis, right? So normally, right, it's an election, but this is an opportunity, it's an appointment. So what are the sorts of things from a Board of Health, from you guys, Board of Selectmen, you would be looking for an individual that would work with you guys from the Board of Health?
If I may?
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Well, personally, I like somebody that, obviously has some type of background in education. I think Erin has shown that with her experience, in the environmental piece of it is very important in my eyes. So I think, for the board, you asked a question, I'd look for that type of experience, personally. I don't know what the other members would, but somebody that's been educated in the field that they're going to be appointed to, so.
Yeah, I would, you kind of alluded to it, John, communication. If there is anything, we would hope that any one of you would pick up the phone and ask for our opinion, or just kind of give us a heads up, no rattlesnakes. We'd like to find out ahead of time so that we don't, there's no surprises. So, and I think either of these candidates would qualify for that, as far as being a good communicator, just from limited knowledge of Mr. Kenny, and I know Erin pretty well. But I kind of agree with Jimmy, with the experience and the environmental piece. I think that'd be a nice asset for the board, because I think you've got some folks on there that are qualified relative to Title V, and you should come up to speed pretty quickly.
Well, using the question that John had asked as a launching point, I'd say the things that are most important to me are, again, communication. I can't argue with that at all. Also, fairness to the citizens who come before you. I mean, if somebody's before the Board of Health, unless, if they're a developer there, they're trying to follow the rules and do what they got to do. And if they're a homeowner, they're just trying to get themselves out of a headache. And, hopefully a good board works with people on that.
Expensive headache.
Huh?
An expensive
Yeah,
headache.
expensive headache, right. You've been there, I guess.
Yes, I am.
Also, I think, an ability to get up to speed on Title V is, of course, important. Willingness to put in the time to get educated and stay informed. And I have no doubt that either one of these candidates would do that. And the fourth thing is stability. Turnover on some of these boards at times is healthy, and at other times you just lose too much institutional knowledge. So I hope, and I thought I heard, that either one of you would be willing to stick around. That being said, this is awfully close and two terrific candidates, and I think I'd give the nod personally to Erin, both on her academic background and the fact that she has thought to run for this position before.
Both great candidates. I mean, what Paul said is hard to follow up on, because he hit a lot of the points I want to talk about, but I always have a place in my heart for someone who runs for a board and had an interest in it before, so I would favor Erin on that part. But I'd really like to hear more opinions from the Board of Health, because you're the one that has to work with the candidate.
It seemed like you heard about all three of them, so.
Well, I've got a little bit more to add, actually. I mean, I think both bring different things to it. Erin's done risk assessment, when I look at the experience we have on the board, both John and I have done risk assessment. Her expertise in geology would be useful, though a lot of that's already ensconced in Title V. I think it'd be really useful if we went to rewrite regulations to have that. I don't know if we're there or not. That may be something we want to think about. George's plus is that he's done with the food code a lot, and when he was with the fair, which we don't have a lot of the experience on the board now. So depending where the board wants to go, if we wanted to rewrite regulations, Erin would be probably the better asset. For day-to-day stuff, we had a food truck guy come before us, and we didn't know much about that. So, and that's something where we could use some experience where it doesn't currently exist on the board. So if we're moving forward and we're looking to rewrite regulations, I guess I give the nod to Erin. If we're going to go status quo and the regs on the table, I guess I give the nod to George, which doesn't help anybody make a decision.
There is, but thanks, Brad.
Well, let me interject something here to get everybody up to speed. Title V is the minimum engineering requirements that everybody has to follow. When you write changes in rules, as any board can do, and they have done that before. We had a whole bunch of rules in place for Littleton for a number of years that were over and above Title V.
We still have some.
So we still have some, but a lot of them we put back into Title V because it was very arbitrary on some of the regulations and stuff. So to myself, we do need to get into things like well regulations and stuff which haven't been looked at for years, but I don't think there's many regulations that we need to change at this point in time to Title V for the septic portion of it.
And DP has model well regulations as well, which we.
Yeah, that was as well, I like that.
Okay, I'd like to make a comment too. I know both of them, they're very well qualified, both of them. But at this particular moment, as much as I wish I can cut, both of them half, but I choose George.
Appreciate you not doing that here, From the Sicilian.
Be wary on that.
So, I'll just follow up on this vein. I think what appeals to me is Aaron's experience with regulations, understanding regulations and interpreting them. They're not always black and white. If they were black and white, there wouldn't be a need for us, right? So I think having someone that has that's sort of what, appeals me to Aaron's background. And it's not just related to well water or groundwater, but anything else we may need to tackle in the future. Just understanding how to read and interpret and implement regulations, that kind of background is incredibly useful. I mean, my background to do that isn't in septics or well water, but it's easier with my background to be able to read and interpret and, extent. So, for me, that's what, I would lean more towards Aaron for those reasons. I think that would be, regardless of the background, an asset to the board.
If everybody, I'm gonna make a motion if everybody's.
I entertain the motion, okay, now, because the
Okay, all
discussion is
right.
done.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I'll move that the Board of Selectmen and the remaining members of the Board of Health vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 11, to appoint Aaron Healy to fill a vacancy on the Board of Health through the May 2017 annual town election.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Do we have to do a roll call,
Oh, do we have,
Keith?
sorry.
No?
Just raise your hand, so I know.
This is an aye.
6, 7, 8. Okay. 8 in favor, and I'm going to call for those opposed to the motion.
Opposed.
8 to 1.
Is that it?
Yep.
Great, okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm pleased to
Thank you very much.
continue.
For coming out.
You want to be on the ZBA?
Yeah.
Zoning Board of Appeals,
Yeah,
George?
Mr. Kenny, there are other zoning Board of Appeals position
Zoning
up.
Board of Appeals,
Already
2
done it.
alternates, we're accepting applications
Already done.
currently.
Congratulations, Aaron.
You have to go to Diane.
We want everybody to go home happy with something, right?
So Gino, I'm making a motion to adjourn, is that okay with you?
Oh, yeah. All those in favor?
Thank you.
Yeah, I forgot. Nice to meet you all. Nice to meet you.
All right.
See you tomorrow night.
No, we're not.
See you next time.
All right, guys, we're going to change this up here. We are woefully behind. I'm just going to get through public input quickly, just to let anyone that's here comment, and then we'll go back to financial policies with Finance Committee and School Committee 2C. Okay, so let's just try to do section 3 real quick, public input. Any public input? Public input, nobody? All right, well, that was easy, it's done. Okay,
Everyone's in pre-debate mode, I think.
I guess.
Are you streaming over there? Another hour, right?
No.
Okay, members' updates. All right, Mr. Glavy.
Yeah, I apologize if I'm stealing thunder from everybody here, but last Thursday was just such a wonderful day for the town. I know during the day I had a chance to work with the playground project, and I know, Madam Chair, you had an opportunity to do that too. That evening, all the other members of the board and I were all supportive of the fields program at the 100 Men of Littleton event over at the Billiard Cafe, and it's just, between both events, so many different people from Littleton, different quarters, age groups, you name it, coming together, and it was a good day for the town.
Fantastic. Mr. Coast.
Thunder Stealer. The one that I will add is this Sunday, there is a fundraiser for LHS basketball. It's their major fundraiser. It's a golf tournament being held at Townsend Ridge Country Club. Again, it's a Sunday, tee time is at 12:30. Still looking for a couple of foursomes, and if you can't come out and play golf, there's opportunities to sponsor holes and make donations to support the girls' basketball team up at the high school. If you have any questions, I do have some flyers with me, or you can get a hold of Stephen Gentili, and I have all his contact information, so if you can't find his contact information, I know that you can find mine, so please do, and it's a great cause.
Fantastic. Excellent. Ms. Farmer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I had the opportunity to get on the fire department and take a look at the new apparatus that just came in. It's a new fire truck, very impressive. In talking to the chief and the deputy chief and the recommendations that they made to the builder of the truck and the way they consolidated two pieces of apparatus into one is pretty amazing. So I'd say to anybody, you all bought it, go down, talk to the chief, and you own it. Take a look at your new piece of fire equipment. Also, I'd like to read a statement from the Office of the Attorney General. Letter dated September 15th. I know it was briefly brought up earlier, but I want to, because it was an issue, it was in regards to the Cooper Farm property. This is a quote from the letter. This office received a complaint from Jane Crisfield on July 19th alleging that the Littleton Board of Selectmen violated open meeting law, general law, chapter 30A, subsection 1825. The complaint was originally filed to the board on May 9th, and on behalf of the board, a letter was dated on May 24th. We responded to the complaint. The complaint alleges that the board failed to include sufficient detail on the topic that was discussed in several executive sessions over the period of months earlier in the year. Following our review, we find the board did not violate the open meeting law. So I know the original complaint made it in the Lowell Sun and the Littleton Independent, and it was all over social media. Keith, if we can get this posted on the website so that folks can go take a look at it and make sure everybody understands there was no violation in the open meeting law.
Find the truth.
And the Coopers, the bottom line, the Coopers didn't want to sell the property to the town. So, we tried, as I think Karen said, we spend a lot of time in these positions. We take a lot of pride in what we do in these positions. And, you know, it's tough to have these allegations thrown at you day in and day out. It's always nice when it comes back from the authority having jurisdiction to say, you did the right thing and you didn't violate any laws. So, again, board members, I commend all of us, and this administration and town council for doing the right thing. Thank you.
Well said. Mr. Knox, we skipped to members' updates.
Yes, on the very lighter side, and a very positive thing, I want to mention that my daughter Kimberly had her first child. A little girl was born. Her name is JoJo Reichland Knox, and they're doing fine. So I just wanted to mention that. So I think I want to mention that.
Congratulations, Gago.
The second thing I want to mention is the Littleton Boosters Association, a week ago Friday, had a small ceremony at halftime. It was the 50th anniversary alumni field, but they brought back together players that played during that time from, I think, 64 to 70. I'm proud to say I was a member of that. And Mr. McKenna came back, and he was the one who started the program and it grew very fast, has been popular ever since, but I want to thank the boosters for doing that. It meant a lot to me, it meant a lot to the people that were there. I know David Coffey came from Vermont just to be there, so the people came quite a ways to be there, so thank to the boosters.
All right, from my side, my update will dive into selectmen goal updates, actually. So when the selectmen set their goals this year, we assigned champions to each of the goals, with the exception of a few where we're all the champion. But what we want to do is make sure we give an update whenever we can during these meetings on those goals. So I'm going to just spend 1 minute on master plan update. So that was one I was assigned to be the champion on, so just a very quick couple of updates. Things coming up, so we do have 2 charrettes planned, and charrettes are an interactive design session where we really want the community to come out, tell us what you want to see in town. The first one is September 30th and October 1st, so coming right up here, about the Littleton Common. So the information's on the website, on the Facebook page. If you can't find anything, you can always reach out to me. I'm on the Master Plan Update Steering Committee. But we are on track for those, lots of planning going on behind that. We've also done a number of community awareness activities. One, the selectmen went down to the LHS football game and handed out flyers, had our 01460 T-shirts on. T-shirts were thrown into the crowd. It was really cool, and thanks again to the schools for supporting us.
I didn't throw a shirt.
Yeah.
I handed out quite a few flyers, too.
You did great.
Yeah.
Everyone did very well.
At the Littleton Independent, too.
We had a booth at the fair, too.
That's right, we were at the country fair as well and did a lot of good things there. And again, Littleton Independent was there to snapshot that also. So we're really getting out there. We are, looking at where are we headed next in terms of looking at existing condition chapters. RKG, our consultant's going to release some stuff for us to review and to vet while we still gather input from the community. We did do a budget check recently, and we are on track with, I think, a small surplus at this point, so we're fine there. So we're rocking and rolling, and at some point, I'm sure we'll need to, have the Master Plan Update Steering Committee come in here and talk about implementation and the next phases of the work. But that's my update for today. Okay, so that being said, let's see, it's 8 o'clock, and we need to really get back on track here.
2C.
So 2C, Finance Committee. All right, financial management policies. Big old packet item, lots of reading in here.
Lots of information.
Lots of stuff.
Basically, it's part of your annual review of the financial policies in coordination with the Finance Committee. And again, we do this each and every year. We might not make a lot of changes, but it's a process that is pretty fluid. So what we did is staff took a look at the policies to see if there are any areas that might need to be addressed that the board might want to consider in going forward with the financial policies subcommittee group. And a couple of things, immediately came to light. We need to wrap up the work that was started regarding TIFs and pilots. There was an appendix drafted based on some input from other communities and what they have in place, but it hasn't formally been submitted for final review. So the committee does need to continue the good work that was started on that. The other thing that we recommended was to maybe look at under Section 21 capital exclusions and special stabilization accounts, item number 5 that defines the debt exclusion votes. We might need to just clarify the language on, what that involves. The language in there now is pretty broad in stating that we need to obtain a debt exclusion vote for major capital projects.
That was just changed, what, 2 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, it's been scrutinized pretty closely. I don't think it was an oversight in any event, the language. But on all these topics, I think it does speak to the need to reconvene the group. I think Jim and I were appointed by the selectmen to represent us, and the FinCom usually puts the chair, vice chair, and Mike Fontanella or whoever from the school committee. But all these topics, good grist for the mill. I'm anxious to get going, so we should schedule something.
So we already have the group formed, if you will.
Yeah, unless any board, they can make whatever changes they want to their appointments, but.
Okay. All right, and who convenes this group? Is there-
Fred.
Fred. Okay, great. Any comments from your side, Fred? No. Agree?
Rock and roll. Are you guys same vice chair or chair and vice chair?
Probably.
No? Okay.
We haven't discussed
We haven't
whether we'll
discussed it at the next meeting.
but
It's on the agenda. Should be.
if he can show up in time for meetings, then maybe he'll come along.
Little dig there, Greg. Ooh, oh, wow.
Cross the bow.
Wow. Woo. Woo. Hopefully you two can be on, you get a little excitement in it. Reading policies can be very dry. Maybe you two can, spice it up a little bit.
But in the budget calendar that both the Selectmen and FinCom adopted earlier this year, tonight was the night that we would, number one, set budget goals and to begin the discussion about policies. So,
Sure.
It starts here and then it goes on to the working group, I think.
Sure.
So,
Well, we've been waiting for that opportunity, so.
Okay, so
no action needed on that.
Nope.
Unless there's anything else in this packet, I know a lot of it's stuff that we've seen before, don't mind seeing it again, but is there anything else new in here that?
No, it's just the information on
Okay.
tips and our existing policy as it sits today.
there was one other thing I caught in here. Is this in our process? Not that I want to add another thing, but the board of abatements. The Board of Selectmen and Board of Assessors should therefore meet annually to establish an overall strategy under developed guidance in dealing with abatement applications. Do we need to do that?
That's something that we haven't done in the past, but I think it would be good to bring the Board of Assessors in and just
Yes.
kind of
Talk about
initiate that discussion.
Could we?
A lot of
another
questions.
separately elected board that you may want to just stay close to.
Absolutely.
A lot of questions about abatements come around end of the year. And I feel questions about them too.
Sure. No, I think it would be a good exercise to.
All right, let's do that. Okay, all right, if that's all on that one, fantastic. 2E.
Just one. We have one applicant.
Community
Sam is here.
preservation.
And the Community Preservation Committee has voted to recommend that you appoint Sam to fill that the vacancy arose a number of months ago. We advertised for a while and got one application, and Sam has been attending the last several meetings of the committee.
Fantastic, thank you for your interest. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, just so we know who you are, but it sounds like this is going to be a short conversation.
Lifelong resident of Littleton, and I'm on the Conservation Trust right now, and also on the Open Space Planning Committee. So I thought joining the CPC, help them out in their decision-making process, and distributing the CPC funds in a way that benefits Littleton for the long run, in the best way.
The committee's had some high-profile projects recently, so it's good to see someone stepping up. We appreciate that.
Board members, any questions?
Just a comment, there are a couple of the Bell families served the town very well over many decades, and happy to see Sam getting increasingly involved, and hope we didn't keep you out too late for no good reason, but hope you were entertained by what transpired earlier anyway.
Thank you.
If anything else? Okay. For a motion?
Move the Board of Selectmen vote to appoint Samuel Bell to a term on the Conservation Preservation Committee expiring June 30th, 2017.
Second.
So moved and seconded, all those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you very much for stepping up.
Congratulations,
You gotta get sworn in, you know that.
See Diane.
The clerk.
Okay.
town clerk.
Open the door and get it done.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
All right, 2F, special town meeting. You see there in the proposed motion, the four at this point we need to talk about because we striked the last
If you want to
one.
strike the town hall,
Yep.
we'll go to West Street one, we get I think that at this point, we could probably strike the blended Community Preservation Act as
Strike.
well. That one can wait till the spring.
Oh, okay.
We talked about it before, but we're, just so long as we don't spend any of those funds in the meantime.
We'll see.
So. Then that leaves three articles. We have Scott Edwards here from the Littleton Water Department. There's a proposed article to acquire some property, and Scott could
Yeah, Scott, maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Can I sit here?
Oh, no, we want you up front. Come on up front, come on now.
You can bring the chair with you, but you have to
We
sit
brought it
there.
in special just for you.
Oh,
just what it's like
Like to tell you all about myself.
Well, we know who you are.
This witness sworn in, please.
Everyone has 5 minutes. Do you have the article in front of you? I mean, I can read it, but
Yeah, it's on page.
I can just give it to you in a nutshell.
A little bit of history, yeah.
Basically, what we're asking the town to do is allow us to purchase a piece of land on Cedar Road, which is adjacent to the Cedar Hill standpipe. As you look at the standpipe standing on Cedar, it's right to the right. So basically, it's the parcel land is, we're gonna pay $200,000 for it. The article states that we're going to either pay it from available funds or borrow the money. We are gonna pay it from available funds, we just weren't sure yet if the free cash was gonna be certified by then. Bonnie didn't know if it was or not, so we put that in the article, just so we had that option, if we needed to do a short-term borrowing. You know, basically, the standpipe needs to be replaced in the next 3 to 10 years. The DEP has asked us to either replace it or recondition it. We actually looked at reconditioning it last year, and it was $800,000 just to paint it. And we have to temporarily relocate cell antennas and Boston EMS antennas and things like that. So what we're looking at is to buy this piece of property so that when we do erect a new tank, we can erect it on this property, leave the existing standpipe operational, leave all the antennas and everything where they are, and then move everything over to the new tank and rip the old one down. So it's, we've learned, we try to keep the standpipe offline for a while. We did have some problems doing that, some pressure problems, so it's you know, big help to be able to keep it online while we build the new standpipe. So that's what we're up to.
Does it just need to be replaced due to age, like just
Yeah.
that age?
Yeah, it's 65 years old.
Oh, wow.
So,
And does that patch land have a residence on it?
yes, well, it has a house.
The house, right,
Yeah,
okay,
it has a house,
Mary
yeah.
Hamlin's house.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it was for sale for quite a while.
Yes, yeah.
And we kind of were hemming and hawing, and we weren't sure, and then when we finally decided that, you know, we were gonna have to replace that tank, it was sold.
Yeah,
So
it made sense to.
I contacted the new buyer, and he was gonna pretty much gut the house and redo the whole thing, and so we're just buying it from them, and they're looking for another house in Littleton, so.
That's neat. I grew up in that house. My childhood best friend lived there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Okay, board members, any questions?
Pretty straightforward.
All right.
Okay?
Thank you, Scott.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Okay.
So that one seems good to go.
See you Wednesday.
Looks good.
Okay.
Yep, Article 11 looks good.
And then there's a proposal to insert an article to appropriate funds into the debt exclusion stabilization fund. And Bonnie's identified and recommending that the funds that were released by the assessors.
Yes, the overlay surplus amount. So basically, annually, I ask the assessors to look at what they have in available balances for abatements and allowances for that. So they will look at what they have outstanding with ATV, Appellate Tax Board, and they were able to release $413,000 from the overlay surplus. We've had a large number of cases that have kind of settled and gone through their process. It's one-time funding. It can be appropriated in the year that they release it. If it's not appropriated within this fiscal year, it will close out to undesignated fund balance and go to free cash.
Does the disposition of this money affect the available monies for Article 5 or not?
It can, yes. It can be used for Article 5, I'm sorry, Article 5 is the capital.
Yeah, because I mean, I have a placeholder with some logic behind it for the sewer one, which I realize has not been assigned a number yet.
There are two sources of funding for Article 5. We have the snow and ice monies that have not been spent, so that's $440,000. And then we have $413,000 that is overlay release.
All right.
So in total, we have $854,000 in one-time monies.
Right.
So you need not decide tonight what dollar amounts
Right.
to put into which, especially where in a number of the capital projects, we don't have final cost estimates yet.
Right. Yeah, nor do I, but
Yeah.
at least I have a placeholder number,
Yeah.
which I
So-
realize we owe, to get people to start thinking around, general
Yeah,
terms.
So what you may want to do is insert those capital articles that you feel you want to go forward with, and then work on finalizing those numbers between now and the deadline we've set of
Right.
October 26th, or whenever it is.
And the residual unspent amounts would likely end up in Article 4.
Could go into the, right, because right now we've established that debt exclusion stabilization fund, but we haven't put any money in it
Yep.
yet. And then that would leave the supplemental capital project articles, which I don't know if you can walk us through any of those.
Well, we have the comprehensive needs assessment for the recreation fields. Again, that is a cost estimate that is being developed. We have the town government building space needs assessment. That would include space for addressing space for seniors, park and recreation. That cost estimate is being developed. The Littleton Common Sewer Strategic Plan, also cost being developed. And I think that the Radio 1 might be withdrawn at this point because while the state 50,000 is in the budget, we won't receive that until May or June. We didn't receive the last earmark until June. So it might be better to wait until we know that there aren't going to be any 9C cuts coming in the spring, and appropriate in the special town meeting so that it can be incorporated all together at once.
If it's a $100,000 expense, and we get our 50 now, but we never see the state. And the other thing about or many of the executive, the appropriations to executive departments, as they're being held by the governor's office reportedly, many of them are for potential 9C cuts if needed. Even district local technical assistance funding, the LTAs, which fund the regional planning agencies, is not, the governor vetoed it, the legislature overrode it, but it's in the governor's budget, his department, so that money hasn't been freed up yet.
And as a practical matter, we can't award a contract until we have all the
Sure.
funding in place.
Chief, how's that gonna impact your process?
I mean, it slows it down, but it's not, we've got a patch going right now that's working okay, so I'm okay with waiting until May. They obviously, we talked about this being a possibility.
Okay.
So.
And if it's awarded in a special town meeting, go forward right away after.
So it sounds like this should probably be put on our 26th agenda, once we have these cost estimates back in, to determine,
Yeah, any of these
Article
lingering,
funding?
a lot of them will probably go right up to the deadline, at least.
Sure.
So the only thing would be, you put the projects in, and if I'm hearing, you don't do
Police.
the communication, but you do the rest of them. You do the studies for fields and space needs and for Littleton Common Sewer, and we will plug those numbers in proposed motions before the deadline, before the publication deadline.
Sounds good to me. That was it, right? There's no other,
That's it for this article.
Well, I'll share the number anyway. It's as simple as this, 6% design cost for the last estimate in infrastructure construction, 4.2 million, comes out to 252,000. And,
towns typically borrow for those things, because you can, if you ever did a sewer project, you can borrow, you can fold the design engineering borrowing into the construction engineering.
yeah, we can't fold that in as an appropriation into the, I think we're operating.
Well, you could, but if you It's a matter of
If you want to charge it back to the
who
users
you want to have
of
it
the
pay
system.
off, right? If you want the users to ever pay it off, then you borrow. If you want the property taxpayers to pay it up front,
Yeah,
then
well-
you appropriate the money.
All right.
More of a
okay.
funding, more of a who pays question.
Well, yeah, well, there's more than that. There's a 2/3 vote versus the majority vote as well, right? Borrowing out.
Well, it depends on where you go. If you take it out of stabilization, that's a 2/3 vote.
Yeah, well, we weren't looking at taking out of stabilization.
No.
Out of the 800 and what was it?
850.
850.
53.
Right.
Well, we have to get tight on that number anyway, but those are all good considerations we gotta work out between now and 26th.
We have the time.
Well, we'd say
We
that
have-
today.
We have the time and we have the money, but.
Right, just gotta get it,
Just
do it
gotta
right.
put it all together.
Thank you, Selectman Glavy. Okay.
Vote to insert those articles, 3 articles.
Let's see, what are they?
So we have 11.
Yeah, let's see. In the draft, and the numbers will change. Article 4, Article 5, and Article 11. And the 5, it would be items B, C, and D.
What? BC and, oh, you mean the,
In the numbering here in the draft warrant.
Yeah, yeah.
You want it?
Good.
Not really sure.
4,
All right, I got
5.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to insert the following articles onto the warrant for the November 16, 2016 special town meeting, subject to approval from, as to form by town council. Article 4, debt exclusion stabilization fund. Specifically, the amount will be determined at a later date. Article 5, supplemental FY 2017 capital items from available funds. A, B, and C, right? Is that what we're talking?
B, C, and D.
B, C, D, sorry. Town government building space needs assessment, including seniors, park and rec, et cetera. Cost estimate being developed. Littleton Common Sewer strategic plan, cost estimate being developed. And funding for newly created debt exclusion stabilization fund.
No, it would be the
Choir.
it would be the comprehensive needs assessment for recreation fields.
What?
B,
Needs assessment.
I did B, C, and D.
B, C, and D. Yeah, that's it, okay.
And then
B, C, and D. And then Article 11, acquire 34 Cedar Road for Littleton Water Department, U17-83-0.
second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you guys very much. That takes care of item number 2. We have taken care of item number 3, so we are in a collection of items in number 4, and we're already at the same time for 5 starting. All right, let's see. Let's see our friends yet anyway.
Presenters are here.
Yeah.
In the hallway.
Perfect.
Well, we haven't finished going through the warrant. Those just the new items.
Everything else is inserted with the exception of the item we'll discuss under 4C.
Okay, all right, which is the reorg?
Yeah, the finance.
Right, okay, that's,
Yeah, everything else is,
so the ones that,
That's been acted
yes,
on.
gotcha.
That's the one
That's
remaining.
Article 16 is the only one left, right, okay.
I thought there was more than that too. Okay.
Oh, sorry, yes, excuse me. Kate, Ruth Goldsmith Street. I'm just wondering, is there any way you could put the wording up on the screen so we can follow along with the discussion?
The wording of,
The
The
warrant,
warrant articles that you were discussing.
you have them, Keith, in digital form.
Well, we're done with them now.
yeah, we have one more.
Yeah, when we get this 4C, we can.
Yeah.
If you got it.
If you can do that.
sure.
All right, very good.
Thank you.
Welcome. All right, item 4A, memorandum of agreement with cemetery commissioners, cemetery superintendent supervision.
This is a request that's come from cemetery commissioners by their vote. You may recall that in a policy guidance document, a couple of years ago, the Board of Selectmen identified some best practices of how staff should be supervised, and one of the options that was identified was when there is an elected board that's the appointing authority, but they're not around and don't supervise the employee, that we've had it as a goal to have some full-time staff person assigned as the supervisor. We've done it with Conservation Commission recently, and before that, Council on Aging, the Zoning Board of Appeals, and the Board of Health. There were some other committees that we are still to get to. Won't mention any names, but we do have the request from the Cemetery Commission to avail themselves of that, the ability to have it to be supervised. So we're using the standard form, which would have you authorize the town administrator or my designee to be the supervisor. And depending upon how we go forward with the reorganization for highway or public works, that it would, I mean, that's the interface that occurs between cemetery and the town is typically through highway on operational issues and through the finance department on, procurement things.
Couple questions. So there's a request, but I don't see a request. It was a voted request?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay,
It's a vote,
and did they agree to the structure of this? I mean,
Yes.
that there should be no more than one member of the cemetery commissioners on the screening committee of person?
Yes, they did, with the understanding that they're still the appointing authority in round two. And if there's and it's the case under the open meeting law.
Oh, okay, I didn't understand that. So the search committee screens and then they do the appointment.
Right, and if a quorum of the appointing authority is on the screening committee,
Then
then
it
it's
kind of obviates the
public.
vote. Sure,
Then it's
right.
public.
Yeah.
And we wanted to do the courtesy for applicants to at least have round one as a private. So that's the way we've structured.
Gotcha.
And and they did vote we presented a draft document, which the commissioners voted to authorize their chair to sign, and she has signed it, and so I have that document tonight.
Required? We do.
Yeah, it's a vote.
Well, the other point I'd add here too, and I don't want to be too harsh at all, this is kind of a generic issue. I understand things come up that you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, and it takes some time to get to this point, but I think an update between when the vacancy occurred and now is kind of spelling out what, your office's role would be in it, would be helpful. It's just when you run into people in the street who know more about what's going on than you do, a simple memo can cure that.
Be happy to do that.
Yeah,
The chair,
yeah,
I know our chair was fully briefed on what the story was, and that's been our reporting structure.
Yes. And I do apologize for we didn't have anything in writing, but I didn't put anything in writing, so I need to too. So maybe Keith, we could work together on getting something that I
Be
can
happy
pass
to
along.
develop a protocol that satisfies all.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions? Comment?
So we're all set with this one, right?
I think we're all set with it.
Well, there's a motion necessary, right?
Yeah, you do need to vote.
Do we want to have them here, just, I don't know, just kind of,
Yeah, were they invited, or did they?
Were they invited? They voted at their meeting.
Well, I understand that,
last
but,
week to agree to your standard form for an MOA. And I don't think they were of the understanding that they would come here to bargain over what it looked like.
I wouldn't bargain, just looking for the courtesy.
How are
Just come
things
before
going?
us
Are
and
you
say,
okay
hey,
with this? Why did you, any extenuating
ask any
circumstances?
questions you might have.
We haven't done that in the past, have we? I remember, feel the MOAs that we had, we've done it the same way, I think.
No, we had the Board of Health here.
Yeah, usually have a discussion with all parties involved.
We've had the Board of Health, who else was it?
Police, DPW, and schools.
Council on Aging, that was
And,
very involved, I remember that.
Park and Rec,
Conservation Commission, they don't come before us before. So to your point, Jeff, yeah.
I just think at least extend the invitation to ask them to come before us, and, I mean, it's not anything
It's not like we're not meeting.
Yeah.
Plenty of opportunities.
Where are we in the process as far as the retirement?
The
He's
employee's
retired.
retired, so.
He's retired. Has there been a request for a filling of the vacancy yet?
Yes.
Yes, and by your policy.
I got you.
It's within the level, so it
Yep.
was approved administratively.
Gotcha. Good. So where are we in that process? Posted?
It's posted.
When is it up? I mean, do we have a ability to have the commissioners come before us, or just have a joint meeting with the commissioners and
If you want.
then next meeting?
Well, next
Do we-
one.
Might have a special one.
Yeah, we might have a special one in between.
Well, we have a meeting next Monday night, but we also have one on the 17th of October, which might be,
But we could be slotting something in between somewhere, right along the way.
no, after the 17th.
26th.
I don't know if I had another
What's
special
next-
one.
We talked
what's
about
next Monday?
Next Monday is your next regular meeting.
It is, okay.
Melissa won't be there.
Yes.
Anyone else not going to be there?
Alexander Haig will be there.
Okay.
Madam Chair, would you mind if the commissioners came before us, or
Absolutely.
That work?
Sounds good. Let's do it.
over there, we can get the process going, at least
Yeah.
have the
Yeah.
opportunity to,
Still
Have a
need to-
dialogue.
yeah.
Okay, let's do
Can I ask a
that.
question on that? On the retirement, and not this in particular, but just in general, it seems like whenever somebody retires like that, it's an opportunity to look, not just say, okay, they're gone, the policy says we can replace them, so we replace them as is. It's kind of an opportunity to look and say, what is the job, and should we combine it, or can we move things around, or are there other ways we want to approach this? Is that done, and if so, how would that happen?
Be up to the
Right?
commissioners to have
Because
a
there's a
joint,
lot of overlay between
Yeah.
what happens there and other places, right?
a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen, it sounds like to have that
Right.
type of discussion.
Yeah.
It just,
Well, getting engaged as soon as the vacancy occurs.
We might want to assign them to Public Works Department.
So,
It's a conversation with the commissioners we need to have.
yeah, part of the conversation for hopefully next Monday.
Do we want to have a full board for that? Do we have a full board on the next meeting on the 17th?
I can make it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Too soon to tell.
That's true too. At this point in
Change by the
time,
minute.
yes. Do we need to?
Do we need
A full board?
a full board?
It's up to you.
It's,
I don't see any issue with you guys proceeding without me. Can't wait for me for everything. Human bottleneck over here. Okay.
I promise to keep this with the seat now.
Thanks. All right, so does that mean we hold off on the motion until we do that, or, yeah?
I think we should.
It's okay? Yes? All right. 4B. And just so you guys know, we are running late. We're trying to catch up as fast as possible, but we are running a little late here. Okay. Highway Public Works Reorganization Plan, 4B. All right, Joe, I know you've been our champion well, you've been plugged into this one, put it that way, and we just appointed you to personnel as well. I didn't know if you wanted to,
Well, I'll start off, and certainly Keith can add on to it. I know that when he posted the last position, we didn't have any caretaker, or didn't have anyone that was interested in it. Talking to people who are in that field, who read constantly what's available, the conversation come back for the amount of responsibilities that are actually there, that the pay didn't compensate. Also, another thing that was brought up too is that people looking for positions sometimes look for the wording of what the job title actually is. And highway superintendent is much different than the director of public works. So if someone's looking, and that's their profession to do so, they're probably looking for something that has a different name, not just highway superintendent. So those are some of the things that came out. We tried to incorporate things that might be happening in the future this board might be approving, whether it's to give this person even more responsibilities if we decided to go in that direction, including maybe someday they would be in charge of the sewer. Maybe someday they would be in charge of whoever was at the cemetery, things like that. So that's where it left with the personnel committee. They asked that we have this come up. I sent everyone on the board a message on purpose because I didn't want anyone here saying, geez, they didn't hear anything about it, because I know sitting on the board in the past, we had other committees, all of a sudden, I'd be sitting there saying, I never heard about this before. So at least we got it out there, and I think Keith can probably add on a lot more than what I just said.
Yeah, and it's on tonight's agenda because I promptly got a request from the director, from the chair, to put this matter on tonight's agenda for your discussion. What we were looking at, we had a team that got together. Joe essentially came out of folks who were on the personnel board, and which includes Joe and myself, and we were looking at, well, what's the next step? If the market is telling us that this job that we've come up with, this idea of a job that we've come up with, isn't going to get any applicants, then what's our next step? Because what is unchanged in all of this is the need for us to have additional staff resources that we can make available for our highway department, or else we are not going to achieve all that we want and need to support our highway operations manager and his department. So we took a look at we discussed the feedback that we were getting, that it's not enough money, that the title, you're not going to get a PE to do all those things that are for the position of superintendent, and that your chances would be better if you called the position what the market wants, which is a director of public works. I have to say that I'm certainly aware that the public works functions in Littleton are spread across a number of separately elected areas, including Board of Selectmen, including the water commissioners and the cemetery commissioners. You don't need to look any further than Acton to see that their public works director does not include the function of water, and no one here is ever, and going back to the Town Government Study Committee a decade or so ago, the idea of merging water with some general government public works function is dead on arrival, and we're not talking about that. But then when you look at all the traditional public works functions that are left, highway and all that means engineering, which we are authorized to do with the town meeting funding, and all of the other areas, including stormwater. We're now heavy into the stormwater business. Transfer station, parks and field maintenance, presumably cemetery, and some supervisory function. We can work that out. We'd have the opportunity in this position to address also public works grant writing, which we're not doing now, and which a number of things that we hope to do would require that skill set. And, dare I say, wastewater. We are already in the wastewater business. In fact, we have a wastewater treatment facility that is town-owned, that services our municipal buildings. And currently, the town contracts with the Light and Water Department. Kevin Hunt provides the services to maintain that wastewater function. We contracted out. Previously, the stormwater function was being performed by Light and Water. That Salvastanos did the stormwater for us since 2003, and we've just in the last year we have transitioned that over to the general government side. So when you look at all of the functions that are performed in your name, that they certainly warrant the term that the market uses, and that is public works. So if we think about the function of public works, and we think about that in fact we're doing those things, can we label it as such? Because labeling it correctly is going to be a key to us to be able to get to get somebody in there for the job. So working with staff and personnel board, we came up with a revised job description, which would be one grade above the one that we'd had on the table. Instead of a grade 12, it would be a grade 13, and would be proposed to have a label of title of Director of Public Works. So in order to carry out the the idea that we have an additional senior staff position that's been funded. The Board of Selectmen very recently voted that that ought to be the department head. And when we look at all of those things and look at the challenges, what we came back with is, in order to meet the goals as we understand them, that the board would like to pursue, is this Director of Public Works. And I feel that we've got to do something to carry out our commitment to make it better for our, for our highway public works functions, and I think this is our best shot.
Okay, well, I'm certainly all for getting the right candidate. That was part of the dialogue that we had about getting the right person. And now changing the scope of what we originally discussed. It's good to look to the future, but we haven't had a chance to discuss it, so let's do that now. Any thoughts or questions? Team wants to go first.
Well, I'll go first. I think, the concern that I had when I saw Joe's meeting, or change his email, was just that. Hey, we approved this position as X, we had a lengthy discussion about it, and to come back, and now hearing those reasons as to why the changes, it makes sense. I mean, if in fact that, the position had to be rewritten to incorporate different titles, different responsibilities, to be attractive to the outside folks with a PE, with an engineering background, I think it'll be beneficial for the town, for us to go forward with it. Now, the piece about the grant writing is a great, great point to be brought up too, because there is money out there to be had. And if we are looking forward to some type of sewering for the common, I think timing is everything. So I appreciate you bringing it back on and having some type of discussion about it.
I think the grant, you brought up the grant writing, that's key. I'm not sure whether it was Jimmy that mentioned that, it might have been the town of Westford, but that gentleman spends a lot of time looking for different grants, and they are getting money from that grant writing.
So the only thing that we're losing here is one of the justifications and reasons that we voted to hire the position in the first place was to get an engineer, to spend less money with Green or some other third party. So, and the requirements as written in this grade 13 director does not address that.
Sure, it's a PE, it requires a PE.
The requirements don't say PE.
Registration as a professional engineer in Massachusetts, page 4, under special requirements. It's a lot of language.
All right, the only other input that I have relative to it is, first of all, Joe, thanks for bringing us back around, alerting us all of it, and Melissa putting it back on. Keith, you were talking about adding, potential of rolling in cemetery and other things may happen,
Yeah.
stormwater, wastewater. To Betsy's.
Well, those other things have already happened.
Correct.
The only thing that hasn't is a formal relationship with cemetery. We have absolutely an informal relationship right now.
It's an MOA.
Yeah.
So to Betsy's point, with, so we've got this position, we've got a cemetery position, we're talking about fields and parks and maintenance, and there's some potential funding mechanisms that are going to be exercised to do some studies and find out what resources we need, what fields we need. So maybe the potential exists where we have maybe the cemetery and the parks and fields are under one umbrella, and that's actually pulled away from highway department. So if we're looking at this from the
I think it's more likely it would
full scope,
if you had a director of public works that would be that.
but I want to look at it from all angles. I don't want to sit here right now tonight and just say, I think it's more likely that this is going to happen. It's not 100%. We might get a candidate that is a superstar when it comes to cemeteries, parks, and fields, and it might be worthwhile for us to look at doing something a little bit different, other than what we're being prescriptive with and saying this is what it's going to entail or may entail.
Or even a hybrid of that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that is the answer, I'm
Yeah,
just
yeah.
saying, we need to be looking at it, again, to Betsy's point, saying, hey, what other, let's look at this from a different angle, see if there might be some other opportunities to maximize the resources that we do fund. So, I don't have the answer, but I think that, somewhere in here, with us noodling it about and bouncing it out there, we may be able to find the answer.
Okay, Selectman Clinton.
Yeah, a few points, and I agree with a lot of the concerns that were raised by Selectman DeCoste and also points made by Joe and Jim too. When this position was brought back in July, I mean, it was, undeniably repositioned, different from what was voted a year ago. So I understand all the rationale for that, but that essentially, the only thing it has in common with the other positions, it's the same department, and a lot of the money had already been allotted. I don't think it's as simple as saying, well, the position requires a PE. Well, that's true, but the actual job essential functions, you have to go pretty deep into the list before you even get any mention of it. And it comes down to reviews all major engineering, design specs, and construction projects. Well, that's not what we were, we were supposed to be getting an engineer in-house to do engineering in-house. And now it's just reviews other people's work. We've been there before. And the other part, as far as grant writing, that's terrific, and it comes up in a lot of positions, but I'll defer, or I'll refer rather to the school department, which Darrell is still here. You guys use a consulting firm for grant writing, or to assist in the grant writing, correct?
We looked at that, and we had one on board for, I think we only had it on for like 3 months, and what we really found out is, based on the demographics of this town, we didn't qualify for any of the grants that were really available.
Right. Is that a unique function to the schools, or?
It's our demographic as a
It's our
whole.
demographic, because
Correct.
most of them
We've
are
looked at
special
fields as well.
needs-based pieces there, and if you look at our income profile and the other pieces there, we didn't actually qualify
Yeah.
for most of the grants.
So
we ended up terminating the agreement with the grant.
As much as we should be ahead of the curve on, and I don't mean to draw you into this discussion to what you want to be, but, grant writing sounds great, but, you gotta have a cold eye toward it. We should be mindful of everything, and that should be almost every department's responsibility to a certain extent, but I don't know, I'm not sold on that being a justification for creating a major position here, but that's even secondary. In August, when we set our priorities, I'd say to the credit of the board, we did identify that a number of these organizational issues ought to be looked at holistically, and that topic of reorg items, including the finance and administration reorg plan and this, were assigned to Joe and I to go back and review, and it was my anticipation that, we'd have a good portion of the year to kind of kick around all the issues and work with all the involved parties. And now it's just back before us for a vote this fall, and I'm not sure why it's on a special town meeting warrant. It just kind of gets out of sync with the rest of the budget, huh?
It's not. We
Well,
have the funding, you don't need to.
Okay, you get the funding. What was voted funding for was a engineer, so okay, even worse than that, it doesn't even get the vetting of the budget process. It's just gonna be a fait accompli by the time the budget gets handed to the FinCom. It already exists. I don't know, I have a lot of reasons to think we ought to take our time and look at this and the other organizational items in a broader scope, include more people and more time in the process.
Okay. Any other thoughts? I mean, I think everyone raised some really good points and fair points. I think the trouble, or the thing that's on my mind is, I know for this and the next agenda item, one of the goals there is to get some of our key resources help and fast, because they were in dire need of it. And so, yes, on this one, we came out with engineering, and you're making really good points. I'm a little, hesitant to take too long that we didn't actually achieve one of the missions that we had in parallel to getting an engineer, and that's relieving the highway department, and also in a timely fashion, because I know, the snow season is coming up, and that help is
really, really needed. So I'm just, oh, sure, sorry.
If I may, Madam Chair, George Sanders, 672 Great Road. I would just like to say, if you had a director of public works, how would that interface with, you have two enterprises, right? Isn't Littleton Electric Light, isn't that an enterprise?
No, but the water department would not be part of this public works department.
So. how
Only
many
the functions
enterprises
that are under the
Littleton
select.
have? Is the light an enterprise?
No,
The water enterprise?
yes,
So the water would not be a part of it?
no. Or
So the
light.
director would not be over the water
No,
department?
Or the light department.
Recreation's an enterprise too, correct?
Yes.
yes.
So, my question is here, what would be the cost saving, I think, that you have to look at as well, to having a PE in the highway department? Because when you look at the top person up here, I think that, you know, where we at today, I think there's time to look at that, but if we are paying a lot of money out, consultant for engineering, when you can bring someone on board, I think that the town would be a lot more smarter to have their own engineer on board if the cost saving is there.
I think that's what we found.
That's how we're funding it,
That,
George.
right, that's how we're funding, and the fact that, that this position would be, whatever you call it, the last meeting, last time it came up, it was superintendent, this time the proposal was director, in either case, it was a professional engineer, and the idea is that because we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on consulting engineers, if we had our own PE, they could better manage those contracts, those very, very expensive contracts for us and help us realize some cost savings. So I think that's unchanged.
Okay, in agreement. Okay, guys, so what do we want to do then? Do we want to?
I'll make a motion. Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to amend the vote of July 11, 2016, and authorize the town administrator to fill a grade 13 full-time benefited position, Director of Public Works, PE, with Highway Operations Manager / Superintendent to remain grade 12, with the finding that this staffing plan within the FTE and budgeted level of Highway Department 2017 as approved by town meeting. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
I never have to use the opposed. Okay, very good. Good discussion. We are like way behind. All right, guys, let's just try to get through this here so we can get out before I have to fly at 6 a.m. All right, finance.
We'll see you off, or?
No, 4C
No, that's
is
a warrant
where
article.
you're at, that's an article.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, 4C is, you're at crunch time on this,
Yeah.
I think.
I'd say we could push off 4D, but that'll take 2 seconds. That doesn't help. All right, so now, next up, similar conversation, but a little bit different. Finance and Administration, Succession Reorganization Plan Proposal. All right, so myself, champion.
And, yeah, right, whoever the champion is on board. I
Well,
think,
yeah,
open it
and
up.
Jim and I were both involved in the development of this. I'll go ahead and take a stab at it, and then if you want to
Sure.
chime in. Okay. All right, so what this one was all about, I guess there was a couple different needs that brought this out. One thing is, we saw within the town administrator and finance director, between the two of them, the level of responsibilities and workload that they have is way more than two people can handle. And specifically, when we look at some of the stuff that is falling to Bonnie, we thought there was a way we could reorganize this to get some relief to her, as well as get someone who's really on point for key issues that make sense, like personnel issues that maybe the finance director shouldn't be focusing on, right? So we went through an exercise to look at, what are the responsibilities out there, what makes sense to be under a finance director and what doesn't, and then what would it look like in the ideal situation. So the proposal, again, was to create a new assistant town administrator position. which would help with being this town second in command. Again, back to those human resources issues and department and board support, procurement officer, grant writing, and purchasing agent. And Bonnie and Keith went through an exercise to pull out those responsibilities from the existing finance director position, to then align that to the new assistant town administrator. Underneath the finance director would be the finance and budget director and the town accountant. So we had really put the acceleration on this one because we saw how dire the situation was and we needed to get help fast. So that's what's before us here. Now, in the meantime, some things have changed, for sure, and Selectman Glavy brought those up. So one of those is, actually, we'll be hearing soon about our new assistant to the town administrator, who's Jen Gibbons' job. We're hearing.
He's here tonight.
He is.
Clancy
Hi,
Bain. He'll be sitting there next Monday night, but this is, Clancy, stand up and. This is Clancy.
Welcome.
Don't know what you're gonna do.
We planned this meeting special.
Yeah. He's certainly eager and has a skill set that can potentially take on more than what we've seen in the past with that role. And that's certainly a conversation that needs to be had. Second thing is, and Selectman Glavy already mentioned this on the last one, which is Selectman Glavy and Selectman Knox got put on the champions on reorg plans, who he's already brought up the point that haven't had a lot of chance to really think about this. So I guess, and I don't know, Jim, if you want to add anything to that.
I guess, when this first came up, we were talking about the possibility of retirements, and when that happens, there is no one there to say, hey, you know who Littleton is and you know how Littleton operates, let's, see if we can aggressively move up. The stresses that Bonnie had gone through over the summer in regards to, is she done here as working for the town? I think that the town is growing. We see it every day. We see it in our packages. We see it in our meetings. Our meetings are getting busy. The town is very busy. And again, when we're close to it, we don't look at it. We expect it. And I think we took a step back and said, geez, you know what? There is some help that is needed within town hall. And I guess that was the push for the whole thing. So I think it's a right thing to do. Towns our size and smaller have this structure, and it's now time for Littleton to have this structure also, in my eyes, my opinion.
I'll just say, similarly to the issues that we were trying to address and fortify the highway, we're trying to take some stress off Jim, frankly, right? And so, similarly, we're trying to do that with Bonnie and with that staff. So, I think looking at succession planning is brilliant. I mean, it needs to be done kind of across the whole spectrum of all of our employees, just to kind of take a look at who's in line. But I'll just leave it at that. I think initially this came to light because we realized that we're trying to get too much out of the folks that are so close to us and do so much for us, and we need to let them know that they are appreciated and try to dole out some of those responsibilities so that we don't burn them out, and that we can have them for the long term and groom people for the future.
Okay.
Yeah, I made some of these points in the last discussion. I think they're even more profound in this case. I don't doubt that there have been duties put on Bonnie that are not within the scope of the Assistant Town Administrative Finance Director, and in relieving her of those things that she shouldn't be doing, I think it's something we ought to do if it hasn't already been done. It doesn't lead directly to a creation of a new $90,000 position in my mind. I think there's a lot that we can do to see if we can maximize the additional, the new personnel that's coming on board, And then I think what I noticed early on in the paperwork that was submitted in July and resubmitted in August is a lot of this, obviously takes place with the consideration of the duties of the town administrator, and yet we weren't looking at that position, we weren't looking at those positions in context of the assigned duties of the town administrator. I think the only fair way to look at reorganization issues is to look at them across the spectrum, see what and not to solely look at a new position and breaking one person's job into two to solve a problem when there are potentially many other ways to address it. And once again, it's out of the cycle of the budget if we choose to go ahead and put it in on the fall agenda. I don't know what the rationale is for that. Except it would certainly make kind of a joke of our priority that we established in August of taking a serious look at reorg issues as a board priority over the course of the year. Because, if we go forward on both of these tonight, then that's essentially done without that review having taken place. And I understand other people putting work into it earlier on, but that work, didn't lead to a lot of board dialogue after it was done. So I'll leave it at that.
Selectman Knox, any comments? Okay, again, I know from my perspective, all fair comments. I think one thing I'd ask is, with Clancy coming on board and some new skill sets, let's look at, what that might look like, how things might be able to shuffle. But for the short term, I think I'm more worried that we may not be able to keep someone that we really, really need. And we made that commitment to her. Yes?
Madam Chairman, George Sanders, 672 Blake Road. You're hitting right on exactly what I wanted to comment on. You have a very fine employee here right now, the CPA, and you burn people out, and it's obvious that this has came to surface. And you all know well better than most people in this room that if you don't relieve that pressure, a person will walk away. And to have her to walk away from this town is a disaster. It's waiting in the wings if you don't do something. So I ask you to look at what has been brought to you and think about what the town can lose as a whole, because I think that she has done a superb job in getting data to this board and making decisions in this town and have kept us within levy, tax levy. So I think that you need to be, as the old person you said, smarter than a rock.
Thank you. All right, that being said, any other discussion?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, dear, I'm looking.
Cellophane man.
Yeah, I actually meant to bring this up in the previous discussion there, because I understand a bunch of other circumstances that are in play at this point here. But one of the things I don't think the board is clear on the creation of the new positions is how is that actually relieving the pressure when we talk about, and I'm going to go back to the previous one, a highway department being understaffed, bringing in a new leadership position isn't clear to me as a resident how that's fixing that we don't have enough staff to mow the fields or the other working level pieces there. Separately, I think I understand there are maybe other circumstances around this other position that you're talking about here in terms of are we properly compensating the person for the duties that are assigned to them. But relieving pressure doesn't necessarily mean creating another senior management position. It means, do we have the right support staff underneath that person who need to bring in additional staff in it? And I just haven't seen that discussion here. And I apologize, I haven't been to every single meeting to know about it. But what I hear is a resident hiring 2 senior level department managers or Director of Public Works doesn't imply to me as the person who's seeing that individuals are overstaffed or organizations are understaffed, that that's staffing the problem. And I face that as a manager at my existing company when they talk about bringing in senior management, but at the working level, that has no impact in terms of help getting the job done. You know, I haven't heard back from your presentations on how that part of the problem is actually going to get fixed. So, you know, I'm not objecting to any of the things here, I'm just providing that as some context around the positions that you've been discussing.
Sorry, to Paul's point about us setting goals and having a reorganization plan as one of our goals. And Joe and Paul, right? Was it Jim?
Paul and I.
Paul and Joe were tasked with being the champions of that. And I think that
The problem with Paul and I is that some of these things have been discussed long before. We're in the middle of things. We have to solve a problem that we don't want to lose our
Exactly.
town
The
accountant.
timing is terrible.
How do we do it without hiring a brand-new position? Do we add duties to other people?
Well, and part of this too.
Something has to be done.
I
don't have
agree
an
with that. I
answer
mean, I've acknowledged that right up front, that there's a problem there, or assume there's a problem there. If there are duties that Bonnie specifically is doing that she's not supposed to be doing, let's identify them. Who's supposed to be doing them? Where are they supposed to go? Are there other ways we can solve this problem? And instead it's like, okay, we got this problem, don't want to lose this person, so therefore we create this position. It's a leap. I acknowledge the problem. I acknowledge the premise of wanting to keep and fairly keep the person involved, but I haven't seen the justification that that's the only way to solve that problem. And then again, even if that were spelled out in a more cogent way, it still isn't part of a bigger process which we need to engage. And I know you can't sit here and talk about long-term plans while people are jumping ship. There's got to be a way to balance both. But I think that's entirely doable. I think all talk of meaningful reorganization, the rest just goes out the window if we just we vote these through tonight. That's it. We've just created more management positions and that'll solve all our problems, and it probably won't.
Well, I think on this particular one, we did have the recommendation from the Town Government Study Committee, and there were two recommendations because they noticed back in 2007 we had a problem here, and the first one was to strengthen the town administrator position or to create a Department of Finance to be managed by a newly created position of Assistant Town Administrator for Finance and Budget. So for this one, we kind of just followed the guidance.
Which was done in 2007 with no addition of staff, but that same report that Joe was the chair of found that at some point in the future, the need may exist where you can't just get by with the existing staff and you're going to have to devote additional resources.
There's a lot of things in that report, too.
And we're at that point. I mean, the issue now is down to what signal will the governing body of the town, the Board of Selectmen, send to staff and to department heads, where we're saying we've got an issue that has got to be addressed. And we just need to see the right signal from this board. I mean, this one goes to town meeting. This one tonight is not the last discussion, but it gives us permission to go to the next step in making the case to the voters. And if the voters say no, that's fair, but and that's what the system is. But it's very important. I can't underscore how important it is for the administration to hear from the governing body that you're in support of solving the problem. And this is the solution that we've come up with over the last since the summer. So when the problem was presented itself.
Is it too much to ask? It's not in here that I see it. The list of the duties that are being performed that are not under the assistant's current job description, and then compare them with the administrator's position, and do they fall there? And if they do, and it's still not a reasonable workload, well then let's look at it that way. Is that where we're at? Because, I mean, I don't know why we should dance around. What are all these functions that are justification for a big new position and a major change in the way that the town's structured? It should be a little more boom, boom, boom. Here's the 10 items right here.
Well, it was also the fact that the fundamental finance function, which only Bonnie can perform for us, is taking on some new challenges that she's just not going to be able to do if she's also doing the assistant town administrator stuff. It's rather that we're entering a new level of duties for the finance function.
Town has grown, we've,
I would argue that, Keith, you just made a comment a few moments ago, that in 2007, we created the position without additional staff. Therein lies the problem. So we did more with less. You know, we created the position, but we didn't identify what all needed to fall under that. And at that point in time, there probably should have been some resources given to Bonnie in order to offload some of that.
I'm confident that that's the case, and what's more, that there are two people here tonight whose plates are overflowed, and that to the point where we've got agenda items to address them. You've done one with highway, the remaining one is for finance, because the plate is too full for all of the duties that have been assigned, and we've got to have a structure. Again, what will the market provide us? The market will not provide us with a better finance officer than the one that we have now, and that is her strength, and that is what any job search that we would do would not find a replacement for. And so we've got to maintain that function in the great person that we have doing it. What the market would be able to produce for us is all those other, the assistant town administrator functions and all that comes with it, that there are.
Yeah, how
A
I
lot
would
of
describe is
candidates
it lets Bonnie focus on finances. This new role deal with departmental support, human resources management, procurement, all those other things that got lumped into this one job. And if you look at her job description, she's striked out the things that wouldn't be in there, and it kind of matches up to those areas. So they're all kind of lumped under Bonnie, and I did a bit of double checking between the town administrator position responsibilities and this, and Bonnie's, to make sure there was no overlap, and I didn't see any. It all was under Bonnie's job.
Well, let me, Madam Chair, get a little clarification here. Now, presently, Keith, the facility supervisor, the director of information services, the building commissioner, the LCTV director, and the elder and human services director report all to you, right?
With the exception that we don't have a facilities supervisor, but yes, that's true.
Okay. And under the job description, two-page job description for the assistant town administrator, the assistant town administrator is now having, as it says here, direct supervision over the following department supervisors. So how does that relieve Bonnie of work if all these functions that are, currently under your purview are going to the assistant?
Well, I imagine that there will be in any, when you bring on another professional position like that, there'll be some divvying up of, some people will be supervised by one, and others will be supervised by the other. Haven't come across an organization where that hasn't happened.
Okay. I think it's the timing that's terrible here. It really is, because like Selectman Glavy said, we said we want to look at the organization as a whole and see what we need to do here. At the same time, we had two hot ones right on our plate, right on our front door.
And I think that goal can still exist, The Town Government Study Committee, looked at it so intense. That goal can be a part of that study. So, that's my feeling.
What does the motion actually say? Does the motion actually say that right now we're going to have?
No, it's just putting the article in, that's all.
And it's
We're
to
just
insert the
inserting
article.
That's all we're doing. So,
Recommend that the sum of $45,410 be appropriated out of Article 3.
Yeah, and, yeah, you're right, and the appropriation.
Now, to be clear, that doesn't fully fund the position, it fully funds it for the remainder of the year.
Correct. And then another 62, nearly 63,000 would be needed to fully fund in FY 2018, which is anticipated to be covered by additional meal and room tax.
But that's designating one of many revenue streams to a position, which we never do, you know? I mean, it goes into the general revenue account. Can't just say, well, we got a couple of hotel rooms, so that'll pay for that. That's the way not to do, I mean, I'm sure that's not in our financial policies.
That's fair, yeah.
Yeah, it's not funny.
Yeah, it isn't, it really isn't
It's
funny,
not funny,
Betty.
it's so
You know?
funny.
All right, guys, so we've all.
Really isn't.
We've all said our piece here. What do we want to do? I mean, there's
I'll make a
points.
motion, Madam Chair. Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to insert the warrant, on the warrant for the November 16, 2016 special town meeting the following. Article 16, Town Bylaw Amendments. Town Administrator, Department of Finance and Budget, to recommend the sum of $45,410 be appropriated under Article 3 FY17 budget amendments to implement the Finance and Administration Succession Reorganization Plan proposal effective January 1st, 2017.
Second.
Move and second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oh, man, all right.
Wait a minute, you got a couple of no's, don't I get a chance to vote?
Oh, I'm so sorry, I've never.
That would be a no.
Can I just say that Jim and Bonnie, we absolutely want to do whatever we can to relieve any pressures, and we want to keep you. So please don't take any of this discussion as any reflection on your individual skills and qualifications.
Just don't do the right thing.
I'll speak for myself, I love you guys, and I appreciate all that you do for us. But it is kind of with a gun to our head that I did vote in favor of it, but I'm having a tough time swallowing it.
I know, I mean.
So this
he
will
has-
go to town meeting.
Selectman Glebe has
and the-
all fair points, all fair points.
Let the,
Yep,
I want to do whatever I can to, personally, to keep you guys.
exactly, that's where the rubber hit the road.
And I appreciate all the good motives and intentions and hard work of everybody else involved.
You're just asking good questions, I know. All right, guys, let's try to knock this one out in, what do you say, 30 seconds? Home rule petition, 40, alcohol license, we need to, it's an administrative vote. Any issues?
Yeah, why can't they serve it on premises?
We can do that.
They give out these limited, like,
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Article 22 of the May 2nd, 2016 annual town meeting and as requested by Senate Council to approve an amendment to House 4453, an act authorizing the town of Littleton to grant an additional license for the sale of all alcoholic beverages not to be drunk on premises, a copy of which the amendment is attached here to and made part of.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Excellent, good job, all right. Sanctuary medicinals, an hour late, thank you for your patience.
Makes you feel any better, we have to stay after you guys are done.
Yeah. My flight leaves at 6 a.m., if that also makes you feel better, so.
Thanks very much for having me.
Thank you for coming.
Come on up, team.
Wow,
Look
we got
at
a
the whole
whole-
crowd.
Yes, I did, yeah. Did you want to
Apologies
open
to you
with a
all.
4-minute video? Or whatever, let me, give me the high sign. I don't actually know if the audio works on it, though.
You guys take a coach?
I know.
Good evening.
Good evening, thank you all for coming up.
Sure.
It's empty for this week. All right, fantastic.
We'll try to make it quick. I know it's been a long night for everybody. My name is Jason Simmons, CEO of Sanctuary Medicinals. We're looking to locate a cultivation site here in the town of Littleton. I have some of my directors with me from our operations in New Hampshire. We're not new to the business. We were the first to dispense, as well as the first to cultivate in the state. We also have the chief of police of Rochester, which is where our cultivation site is located. And he was nice enough to take a drive down here and maybe shed some light on what the experience was and how we've partnered with the community. And we also have our analyst security side. He's been in the business for a very long time. His name's Sam Osceola from Passaic,
and he's one of the people who is going to be outfitting our security here. And we have a video, if hopefully we can get some sound through it, possibly.
You don't get to see a lot of videos.
Yeah.
This will cool us down.
Yeah.
Cool as cucumbers.
It's better than watching the debate.
Oh, I can get that on too.
It's for the therapeutic cannabis program, and we were fortunate enough to be a winning applicant.
New Hampshire is a vertically integrated state. That means that you have to cultivate your own medicine and bring it to your dispensary. So everything goes through a process depending on what the final product is going to be. And then it is put into packaging at the cultivation site where it's childproof packaging. If it's an edible, for example, it's single serving.
My major concern is the police chief of public safety. They're an extremely secure, safe facility, probably the safest and secure facility in the entire city.
We're upheld to very rigorous standards, and the state has fully reviewed all our security protocols. No one from the public can get into this facility. Prior to even getting into the facility, a patient has to display both their therapeutic cannabis card as well as a valid photo ID.
Sanctuary ATC is unique in the sense that it truly is like a doctor's office. I am actually here as a board-certified prevention physician. I am actually here meeting patients.
We're not here just to sell cannabis. We really truly care about our patients and their well-being.
We're happy to have them here in Rochester.
My name is Nicholas Sadmary, and I am the Director of Cultivation here at Sanctuary ATC. My job is to ensure that we produce the highest quality medicine for our patients here in New Hampshire. On an everyday process of growing cannabis, my role is to really breed the plant. Every day we're monitoring every environmental factor, but in the end it's, is your plant happy? Once the plants are inside of the vegetative room growing, it's very important that we keep them consistent. And we'll make sure that all of our vegetative plants are up to a certain standard before we take them into the flower room. So this is our flowering room. This is where all the magic happens. Right now we have about 17 different genetics hitting every type of product for the patient, every ailment. With careful environmental control, careful watering, we're able to really bring that consistent product to the patient.
Some patients don't want the flower product. They want something more discreet, like a tincture or a cookie or a capsule.
We offer a lot of products that don't even have any psychoactivity to them. It's a CBD, which is cannabidiol. It's the real medicinal component of cannabis. That it's anti-inflammatory. It helps with bone growth. It's anti-carcinogenic. We have different types of sativas and different types of indicas, and they can help people with different disorders or different problems. About 25 years ago, I broke my neck and have chronic pain daily, usually worse towards the end of the day. And I find that cannabis helps with pain. I treat that one, same with my spinal cord. Therapeutic cannabis, it's allowed me to deal with certain things such as insomnia, I have issues with muscle spasms. Sanctuary ATC is an incredible facility and has really wonderful people working for it.
Every process that we undertake here at Sanctuary, we really try to exceed the bar.
When patients come in here, just to see them smile and know that they're going to be getting medicine that's going to help them is so rewarding.
I'm definitely a supporter of their facility and believe they're a great partner to any community that they may go into.
Very nice.
Wow, you saved us a lot of time.
You had the whole crew on there, too.
Yeah, really, good job,
Yes.
guys. And maybe one of the things we can start off with clarifying is the scope of the project. 'Cause maybe some of the things you saw in the video may not exactly be occurring in the scope of this particular project. So
Absolutely.
why don't you tell us a little bit about what you like to do?
Absolutely. So we're looking at a site at 234 Taylor Street. We're looking to buy the building. and basically do a build-out inside of the building. We won't be changing anything on the exterior, and it will be a cultivation site only. So there would never be anybody from the public or anything like that.
No customers, no cash, no people
Never
coming
cash.
in, no.
No.
This is a cultivation site, which means growing the plants and harvesting them and maybe baking with them.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Go for it.
So you've been awarded by the Commonwealth to be a cultivator or grower.
Yes.
There are very few licenses within the Commonwealth to do that. Why this spot? Why Littleton right now?
That's a great question. Well, there wasn't actually very few that have been awarded. Well, I should say there's been quite a few that have at the PCR stage, which means provisional certificate of registration. There are actually close to about 170 applicants. So we have 3 licenses here in the Commonwealth. We're at our final phase, which means you're invited to site plan. So now that we're in site plan, we are before the board naturally to seek a letter of non-opposition support for our location. And once we get that, then that gets issued, then we get our PCR, where we can actually begin to build. Why Littleton? It's absolutely conveniently located. I mean, it's a great, tremendous location. The dispensing locations that we're looking at, and we're going before the boards in those municipalities as well, they're all within a half-hour drive time within the spot. And also, on the electric side, you have your own power company, which is extremely beneficial and advantageous. As you can imagine, when you're cultivating indoors and making and creating that microclimate, there's some energy involved there. So that's another great point.
Gotcha. So in the process, you said you're in the CTR process right now with the Commonwealth?
No, site plan.
Site plan process.
Final, yes.
And what regulations, and I know, Chief, I'd like to hear your comments. What regulations differ for security? I know that there's very stringent security policies and practices that the Commonwealth's looking for. What differs from New Hampshire in regards to that?
That's an excellent question. I'd say they're very close because, the way that we, designed our facilities, there's a level 1 aspect, which is proximity card or RFID. Then once you go to more levels or higher security within the facility, you get to biometric. The way our facility is designed in Rochester, we skipped all those and went straight to biometric for 1. So you need a proximity card and biometrics. Then in addition to that, we have all types of
Help us out with the
security.
biometrics thing.
You could use your eyes,
Okay.
retina scans, or fingerprints,
Okay.
things of that nature.
Forehead scan for you.
All right, Mr. Fivehead.
So in addition to that, every inch of the facility is covered by closed circuit TV, of course. It's on a constant motion activated roll, so we keep 90 days backup as mandated by the state. We back up at least 180. I mean, everywhere we go, you turn there's security measures at our facility. But that being said, I would like to add that I think a lot of people may think that these are really attractive environments to certain types of people, but I'd like to say that we've never had any issues. I couldn't even imagine someone trying to get into our facility. And even if they could, off hours, everything is in our vault, and no one's we have a real bank vault that we brought up from a bank in Philadelphia, and we're gonna do the same exact thing. Here is our plan. So all cannabis is stored in that vault off hours, and even during hours. We only access the vault in the event that we need to do a formulation and actually make medicine.
So Chief, question for you. How has it impacted your department first? And secondly, are any monitoring of his facility currently monitored by your staff?
So the answer to your second question is yes. We have access to their video surveillance system in their building. So they offered that up from the very beginning, and we do have the ability to connect to their IP video system and monitor any camera, primarily in an emergency situation. If an alarm was to go off there or there was a call for service there, we would have that capability, and that's done right from our dispatch center. We have a centralized dispatch center that dispatches for police, fire, and EMS. Rochester's a city of about 30,000 people, so, but similar characteristics in our community as there are in Littleton. So we were a blue-collar town. We're transitioning to more of a white-collar community, so I think there's a lot of similar characteristics between our communities. But if I may, just to give you a little background on me, I'm the police chief there now for almost 5 years. Been in law enforcement for almost 29 years. And when Jason called me and asked me to come down and speak on their behalf to you, I was really happy to do it. And I was happy to do it because they have been a partner in our community from the very beginning. Jason was kind enough to reach out to me during the early stages of this project going in our community. And I will tell you, I'll be the first to tell you that I had a lot of trepidation about a cultivation site going in the city of Rochester because, you know, I had really a lot of misconceptions about the industry and what it was really about, how an operation like that might impact our community. So I was behind the 8 ball. I had to really educate myself on the industry and really talk to other chiefs in other communities that have had a facility like that go in about what kind of an impact it might have on our community. That was a big concern of mine. Obviously, public safety is something that I was really worried about. And I'm here to tell you that my concerns have diminished completely. This facility, from the very beginning, we worked very closely together to ensure that this facility was going to be the safest building in our city. And I mean it when I tell you that. There are protocols, there are procedures, there are access control, video surveillance, all the things that they have in place to make that a secure facility are first class. First class, and not only are they first class, but they've also been a great partner in our community. They're involved in the community, they want to be part of the community, so they're not just a business that's there to make money and then you know, you don't see them again. They're invested, and they're a great partner with our police department. And from my perspective, I have a background in what's called Sept, which is crime prevention through environmental design, which is, I'm a trained instructor in that area through the National Crime Prevention Council. And so when they asked me to come in and take a look at their facility, they took all my suggestions that I had for security improvements throughout the building and implemented every single one. They followed through on everything I recommended. So, you know, I was excited to come down here and really, and I have no skin in the game here. I'm here in an official capacity as a police chief, speaking on behalf of a business in my community. So, those are my thoughts.
Fantastic, and we thank you for your time, and again, apologies for running late there. Thank you for sticking with us, appreciate it.
Just one other question, Chief. How about calls?
So, great, sorry I missed that part. Zero. We've had 0 calls for service there. We've had 0 complaints from any of the neighbors. And there's a house right across the street from that facility and another residence right on the corner before you turn onto the road that the facility is located. Neighbors, no issues, no calls for service, no crime issues, no quality of life concerns at all. And it's a pre-existing building that they moved into, so it was an industrial building that they moved into, and they retrofitted it to accommodate their operation, and similar to what they're looking to do here. And it's been 0 issues. It's been great.
Thank you.
Justin, we actually have our chief here as well, and Chief, feel free to chime in with any questions or comments from your side.
We actually, I didn't send it to the board on purpose because I don't want to influence you. Sanctuary and I met on Friday.
Oh, good.
With the chief and went over it,
great.
so I wanted you to get the questions directly from them, and I'll, you know, if you have any questions of me.
Perfect. Fantastic.
By the way, you have a first-class chief. When we met with him, you know, he was great.
Awesome. Thank you for the
Don't give me-
feedback.
I know. What that cost?
Thanks, Chief, appreciate
What that
it.
cost? Pay raise is coming.
And with that plaque, Chief, you're now certified?
Quid pro quo.
Certifiable?
Madam Chief, can I ask a question?
Sure, absolutely.
Can you tell me, just so the public knows, how does it start from the beginning? Do you start with small plants and do they grow to a different size? And I heard you say you put everything into a vault. Obviously, all those plants you're growing can't go into a vault.
Oh, of course.
But is it just the final product that gets put in the vault?
That's right. So here in the state, we'll start with seeds, and genetics are very important. They're really coveted. That's the IP areas on the genetic side, because each strain has a different cannabinoid profile, and that's what we're going after, is doing extraction and fractionation, isolating individual cannabinoids. So when I said that things are in the vault, you're right, it's not the plants. It's actually the medicine that we produce from the plant. So that could be a flower, it could be an edible, it could be a fractionated cannabinoid. But that all gets stored in the vault. But as far as plants go, we're talking about, that would be now in a level 3 area of the building. That would require biometric access, which I think we're gonna go with retina scans, which he could touch on. This is really, really secure. The front end of the building, absolutely no public is allowed in these buildings, number one. We're actually planning on putting a gated entrance in the front of the building on our driveway, so that we wouldn't get any unwanted guests anyways. But the front of the building would be level 1, which would be administration. And once you get past that building is really, we did a security profile on it. It has brick walls. I mean, it's a really solid structure.
Just one other thing, Chief, I'm glad you said misconceptions, because I think the public has this in many, many towns when you hear the subject. As one that has a relative that needs this, I've seen the need, and we had meetings before where people were very nervous about having marijuana in town, and when you see it from a real medical area, when it's actually helping somebody, you say, oh my God, this isn't what all these misconceptions are out there, and I'm glad you brought the whole crew on, that you mentioned these things, because there are still people who will be asking us questions tomorrow. Why are you doing this, or this is gonna happen, or this leads to this, that type of thing, so.
And that's where we can come in, because our job is also to educate people. So, and get, groups of people up to speed on what it is we do, what it is we don't do, what really are the misconceptions in the business. We've been in it for almost 2 years now, actually closer to 3. So we know the business in and out. We have a tremendous amount of talent on our team, true professionals, everywhere from the lab to, taking care of the plants, to sourcing incredible genetics from around the world. I mean, we're a first-class facility. We really are.
Just one other question. I know you're not going to be selling in town, just cultivating. Do you have any idea what your final product costs when it's being sold some other place? Or
Well, in New Hampshire, for example, which would be similar to Mass, it really depends on what product it is. We make everything from salves to tinctures to, every kind of edible that you can ever dream about. I mean, we have a lot of patients that have gluten intolerances, for example. We make organic exclusive products. I mean, we do a lot of different types of things. So if you're talking about flower sales, flower would be the bud from the plant. So on average, we sell maybe, in this state here, it's going to be between 21 and probably 23 grams of flower per month per patient on average. And that would cost them, $300 or less.
I'll turn it over to someone else, but I just love to hear when you say this salves and this edibles and things like that, because I can tell you the person that I was referring to at one point had to take the leaves, I guess, and they had to boil it and do all these other things, and to get the salves and something else, they had to travel down to Fall River, I guess. So
we can make aerosol. That's probably what they're talking about, boiling down leaves and things of that nature.
It took a long time to get the product out that they had to use.
And furthermore, because we have a full lab, we make a lot of custom medicine in New Hampshire. So we get requests for certain types of delivery methods, and we can make that formulation and put it together. So we really specialize in catering specific medicine for specific issues in delivery methods. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you guys mind if I comment on that as well? I'm actually the director of research and product development. I'd like to kind of clarify that a little bit, if you wouldn't mind. My name is Alex Leapster, by the way. It's a pleasure to meet everyone. But yeah, just to clarify more on what Jason was saying, from a perception standpoint, as far as how it would be in the community, I think one of the main conceptions is, although it's an incredibly safe and secure building, security is overwhelming. From a visual standpoint, it's not something that's really noticed in the community. It's not a building that you drive by and it's automatically a cultivation center that's affiliated with cultivation of cannabis, period. It's something that's fairly discreet, that if you do come into it, it certainly is something that is well protected, but isn't an obvious building for the purpose in town. So I think in the town I come from in Maine, typically that would be a concern for my town, is visual changes of that, and I think it's kind of important to highlight that it's a fairly low obstruction visual there. But as far as products are concerned, to touch on that as well, is Sanctuary, I've worked at a lot of different dispensaries, and I think one of the highlights that I love about us as a company is that we're focused on high quality organic products, and particularly things that are geared towards patients who have specific needs and conditions, but more so in a high quality fashion, where we don't believe that treating a cancer patient with a ton of sugar product is the most beneficial medicine for them. We focus a lot on tinctures and coconut oil capsules and making milligram specific formulations. My partner Dan and I here really pride ourselves on high quality carrier oils, really doing our research and R&D. Very important to us, as well as our analytics in state. And Massachusetts is fortunate enough to have one of the best cannabis labs housed in it. So as far as analytics is concerned, we are very confident in being able to offer high quality products. But just something that was important for me to pass on.
Oh, it's great. It's great information. Thank you.
I want to take a few moments, pass along some real estate information. So giving everybody an overview of where we are location-wise at 234. My name is Jimmy Alex, Sanctuary's real estate consultant here. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mind if I use this board here?
Not at all. Jimmy, you mind if I talk while you're getting set up?
Oh, no, yeah, go ahead.
So, the chair and myself met with the two petitioners that came before us, and Chief mentioned trepidation. As the father of five, gateway drug, I had all these misconceptions and perceptions and trepidations about marijuana in Littleton. And meeting with you guys, it was a true education. And it was a short period of time that we met with the town administrator and with Mayor Tuhill, and asked some great questions. You guys had every answer we needed, and I came in with a list. And you assuaged all my concerns and fears and misconceptions. And I'll say that it was eye-opening, having conversations with Selectman Knox and other people that have come to know that have had the benefit of these types of products. Personally, I'm excited about the opportunity to engage with somebody like this. You guys have really presented as a very professional organization. I appreciate all of you coming out tonight, Chief. Your presentation was fantastic. I really appreciate that. I think that helps for all the people at home to hear that we've had zero incidents, and I just can't say enough about these guys and the presentation and how cooperative they've been with us, and just your presentation tonight, the video, everything you've done has been world-class.
Quality.
And I have no reason to think that a facility that you would operate would be anything but. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
So I want to walk you through a bit of, it looks like Keith, you already put up the...
Yeah, just from our GIS, that in the red is this portion of the map that includes the RMD overlay district, and this parcel is located here, which is within the overlay that the planning board had selected the industrial zones in town, and as that map shows that in there it's in green appropriately, and with the red dots indicating distance from excluded uses, which we are not near.
No flags.
No children things.
Yeah, this was set forth back in March of 2014, and through our due diligence, we determined that nothing further has occurred in this particular area within that 1,500-foot radius. So we're currently under the IA zone, as we all know. Provide you with kind of an overview aerial here, further delineates the site that we're talking about. It's 234 Taylor Street, right here. And yeah, we chose the location, Route 495 and Route 2, obviously for access purposes, and feel it's in close proximity to the areas that we're trying to locate our dispensaries. 234 Taylor is a property that's 6.34 acres of land. Currently houses a 35,000 square foot building here. It's a concrete slab, corrugated steel frame.
Is that building occupied right now?
It is.
It is?
Yeah, the owner occupant is Electronics.
Okay.
It's a group out of New York.
Yeah.
They have every intention of relocating. I'm not sure they're going to locate in Littleton, but they are relocating sometime in the next 6 to 7 months. So Sanctuary is indeed a contract purchase of the property.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got a 35,000 square foot building here on 6.34 acres of land. The point here where this would be the administrative office is about 150 feet up onto Taylor Street, and just off of Hill Road here. So here's another shot facing north. And that's an aerial, so you can see that sits, again, a bit further away from Taylor Street. And right now, there's no plans to expand the building at all, so we're basically taking the property as is and retrofitting the existing structure. You'll see on the next plan here is the site plan. So we've got 57 parking spaces on the property right now. The loading area is right here. We're going to have a kind of a transport loading area here to the back of the building. We'll drive in and secure our transport, and we'll probably be taking trips how many times?
2 to 3 times per week.
2 to 3 times per week.
Just to note, it won't be in any type of big truck or anything like that. Right now, we use basically a Toyota in New Hampshire. So down here, it might be probably a van, some type of van.
A van 2 to 3
box.
times a week.
Yep.
So our trash area will be secured and fenced-in area here. As Jason mentioned, we're probably going to put a gate for security purposes here. And you see a natural, buffer with all this existing today. That's just another shot on each side. I think that as part of the email the other day, you got a copy of the floor plan. So that here demonstrates a total build out of the 35,000 square feet with admin here. I'll probably show you the loading area that currently exists, all to the rear of the property, so it's staying away, it's not visible from the street at all. But this is the door that we're talking about, the transport area. This would be our loading, and we're probably going to mothball this particular loading area as well as that. So, that's a close-up shot there too.
How you gonna do that? You gonna block it up, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That's a shot of the street view shot of the facility from Taylor Street. Took it at a fall, give you a dimension of.
Nice.
So it gives you a quick overview of kind of the location and where it's at.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
All the cultivation then would take place in the building under lights, all with,
That's right.
is that your normal,
Absolutely.
because I know we've heard from other proponents who, would use more of a traditional greenhouse, natural lighting, augmented with I'm
With
just curious
additional
what the,
lights,
what the differences are there or why.
Well, I'm not a professional in light depth buildings. That would be a greenhouse scenario for cannabis growing. We would call it light deprivation. So that would be a great way to grow. For us, we find that, yes, it is slightly more expensive to grow inside a building naturally without the natural sunlight, but we have better control over the climate, so to speak. But like, there are so many changes being made all the time, and
And you can get the same kind of yield even in a artificial lighting setting, and, yeah?
Oh, absolutely. I would argue, Nick, our director of cultivation, I mean, you could almost make an argument you would get a better yield out of artificial.
My name is Nicholas Sadmer. I'm the director of cultivation there.
You were on the video.
I was.
Who wasn't in the?
There's quite a few people.
I actually have about 5 years in commercial greenhouse agricultural experience. And in an indoor environment, you actually are able to manipulate the environment to perfectly create that, to actually get much better harvest, more consistent product, and a higher medicinal value.
Sort of like that movie Martian, right?
Potatoes.
But, yeah.
Dumbing it down for me.
There's a company in South Boston called Freight Farms. They take freight containers and they do exactly what you're talking about. And they control it all with, you can do it from your iPhone. You can control the humidity, and it's amazing.
From a QC perspective, it makes it easier for us to be aware of any mold or pest issues and certainly mitigate them easier. So we have better control of our environment and hence better control of our final product.
So you mentioned environment, and what Selectman Glavy alluded to, the previous petitioner, talked about doing greenhouses, and they talked about venting on top of the greenhouses. So I asked about mitigating any odors.
Sure.
Would there be any odors permeating from the buildings? It's all self-contained?
No. Right now,
So
it's
no
all
Febreze?
self-contained, completely sealed rooms with UV and carbon filtration. Many people around can contest. There's no odor coming out. After a couple weeks, everybody's forgotten it even went in there. It's old news.
From New England's perspective, it's easier to control an indoor environment or a sealed environment. So instead of having an air exchange where you do have noxious odors leaving our facility, it's easier to control them in an indoor environment and deal with them with carbon filtration or other methods of odor removal.
And I can attest to that at the existing site in my community. No odor at all. It's, the location is really, it's not the same layout, obviously, but the building style is similar. It's an industrial building that they're located in with a Sallyport area, and you don't even know it's there. You drive by, you just don't know it's there, and it'll be the same for this location, which I think is really important from a public safety perspective. That it's very discreet. You don't have people driving by saying, "Oh my God, what's going on in that building?" I was concerned about that. It was one of my trepidations that I had from the very beginning, and I think it's important that a facility like that be located in a building that's very discreet.
Can I jump in again? You mentioned that Jason and his team have been great working with your community, and Jason, you mentioned helping to educate. Did some of that happen? Did some of that take place? I mean, because I can anticipate that we'd probably want to do something if we were to move forward to, use some of your resources to try to educate the public, to bring people up to speed and alleviate some of those trepidations that everybody has, I'm sure.
So Jason and I have talked about him joining Rotary, and that'd be a great way to educate the business community in general on a lot of the misconceptions that obviously we're talking about tonight. And the other thing that we have plans to do is there's a lot of training going on now with all the terrorism and active shooter situations we have throughout the country. One of the things we're working with him and partnering with him on is training all his staff, not just in the Rochester facility, but we could do it in other facilities as well, training on active shooter scenarios. So So again, in the interest of protecting employees, protecting the community, making sure people are prepared in the event of an unfortunate situation like that occurring. So they're really, I say they're a great partner, I really mean that. They want to be part of the community. They're not interested in just making a buck and occupying your community. They want to be a part of it.
Thanks, John.
Very important to us. Thank you. Sure, 1 second,
So,
Darrell.
so you talked about the electrical piece, we also have our water department. Is this hydroponic, or is it?
Absolutely.
It is.
So we do use quite a bit of water, but here's the great thing. We can recycle up to 90% of the water that we use,
Okay.
which is extremely advantageous for us. All the water that comes into the facility has to go through a distillation process, and then we have it in holding tanks. And then the dehumidification systems will grab that water, put it back into the distillation, and repeat the system over and over. So depending on how tight the room is, they actually think, the company that we're in negotiations with thinks they can get it in excess of 95% recycled, which is really impressive.
Sure is.
Talk to us a little bit about jobs.
Jobs, absolutely.
What types of jobs? Will there be any new positions open that
There'll be
folks can apply
quite a few new
for?
positions, absolutely. And in our community host agreement, we said that we would do our best efforts to hire people locally within the town of Littleton. And I would expect anywhere from 15 to 25 new positions just to even start.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned.
Everything from growing to baking to cleaning
Transportation.
to transportation. There are a lot of positions that need to be filled.
Fantastic. Thank you.
What type of backgrounds do you do, and Chief, were you involved in any of the backgrounds, or is that?
No, I have not been involved. Like I said, I'm here in an official capacity as the police chief, but I know they do have a screening process.
You have a screening background process?
Oh, yeah. So in order to even move on to the first step of the licensing process, you have to be fully vetted by both a federal and state criminal background check. It's really extensive, actually. So we have all been vetted naturally, and all been vetted in New Hampshire as well. And any employee that we bring on has to go through the same state process.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Darrell, I think you had your hand up.
One question, you had mentioned about odors, but what about plant waste? What do you do with that? And how is that controlled afterwards, and then how is it disposed?
Absolutely, that's a great question. So basically, it will be the same as it is in New Hampshire. We shred the material, which would be the stalk and the fan leaves. We render those useless. So it's shred and then mixed with a 50% compost material, such as like soil or paper or something like that. And then we would put it into a locked storage, basically outside. And how we do it in New Hampshire is we leave it in inside of our facility until the pickup comes, and then we bring it out that morning. It's in a locked, big, basically, big storage area. And down here, we actually already have a fenced-in area with barbed wire on the top, which would be very suitable for that purpose. Yeah, you would never recognize it when it leaves our facility.
So you won't be composting it on site then?
Oh, no.
No, well, I'm just trying to understand, that's all.
Oh, absolutely. What we do is we put it in boxes, we take the boxes, and then we throw the boxes in that area. Yep.
In that storage facility, the storage area, and then that area is empty.
That's right.
On a regular basis.
On pickup day.
1 second.
To clarify as well, that material is rendered useless via our extraction methodology or intentional soaking or shredding of, in some type of solvent that would make it not usable to any trash or anyone who would be removing that product from site, who's charged with that product still would be useless to them, after it leaves.
The secondary concern was about, I think there was a composting site in town that ran astray and caused significant public nuisance.
I can see that, yeah.
Mr. Sanders, in 1 second, I think, Chief, were you going to make a comment related to that, or was it a different question?
More of a comment, or
Go for it.
may take a minute or two. First off, Mr. DeCoste touched on it. There's a difference between generalized use and medicinal, number one. I still have a lot of trepidations about generalized use, but this is a medicine, manufacturing company, for lack of a better term. Same questions you've asked me, the same questions which really aren't necessarily even my realm somewhat, was noise and smell. Those were negated. Traffic in and out. It employs a number of people, but it's not like it's employing 1,000 people where it's going to put a ton of traffic on the road. The security issues I've heard about are basically, they work in partnership with everywhere they've been. Not to sway you on companies, and I have obviously no skin in this game either, but this company came into the community, at least reached out to me directly, and always stressed community partnerships and working within the community, helpful with education on whether it be drug issues or other issues that are big to the community. I did not really hear that from the other group. Maybe you did in some private discussions, but I never heard that. So I think the way this group has come in certainly has really eased all of my fears at this point in time, I guess, if you will, if they were fears or questions. And the way they did it was just in a professional manner. And I guess it's the way I've grown up in Littleton since I came here, I was 22 years old to realize how our community works. And it just, from all appearances, they'll be a great community partner. And again, they talked to me already about we'll have full access to video feeds and everything else if there is a situation, so.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you. Mr. Sanders?
Yes, I think that you started at the right place by going to our chief here, because those are the people there that protect us in this community here. And they've done a fine job. So if the chief speak highly of you, then I guess we as residents here, we have our faith in them. But what I wanted to ask you was a few questions about, you said that because Littleton had its own supply system of electricity, that's good. It goes out every once in a while, not too often, but every once in a while. And I would just like to know, do you have, because you talked about all the electronic surveillance system that you're going to have in there, what you're going to have for backup power, and will you have an emergency generator that will kick in? I'll let you answer that first.
That's a great question. We absolutely have to have a diesel backup at the facility. If those plants, if the climate went astray for even 2 hours, we could have a serious problem on our hands as far as the plants go. As far as security systems go, they're all backed up by battery for a minimum of X amount of hours, usually 24 to 48 hours. Sam could speak about that if you want a more clarification on how that would work, battery backups, but.
No, that's good. I understand battery.
We'll have a big diesel there for sure.
The other question is, what's the hours of operation at this plant?
Great question. So I would say probably 8 to 8 would be the normal time frame, with people really being there from 8 to 5 on a normal basis. But if it came up to harvest time, there could be a group of people that could stay late.
Or is there weekend operations there?
This is a 7-day-a-week situation. Yeah, maybe not for the kitchen, maybe not for the lab. Right now in New Hampshire, the lab kitchen run 5 days a week. As long as we can meet the demand, that's okay. But as far as cultivating goes, we have to be on this environment day in, day out.
Okay, so your harvest is stored in this vault that you said. What size is this vault?
The vault in New Hampshire is 45,000 pounds. It was one of the hardest points of the whole project. I learned a lot from that installation. I changed some things down here for sure. That vault up there, I believe, is about 15 by 15, about 8 inches thick with hard plate. And I have every feeling that the fire chief in this community is going to say the same thing as they did in Rochester. I want a sprinkler right in the middle. And that was quite a job to put in.
On the plants that are left out, I believe in Murphy law. Anything can happen. On the plants, is there any high security once you leave that at the end of the day, that if someone broke in there, they couldn't get to those plants?
That's right. That's the different levels of security. So For example, you would need biometric access to get into certain points of the facility. And then, explain it. So biometric, you need a key card. Dan has one on him. So you need that in addition to, down here, I think we're gonna do retina scans. Sam could speak to that. There's some new technology out there that makes it really fast to do a eye scan. So that's one way. At our facility right now, it's with a thumbprint and a card to get into those areas. Then, once you're into the workspace cultivation areas, there's further locks on each individual door that goes into each flower room.
Okay, last question. What method do you have in place to ensure that your employees do not leave out of there within the source?
Diversion, excellent question. The way that it works is we have a seed to sale system, means we can RFID track each seed wherever it is in the facility through the entire stage, all the way till it gets packaged, till it actually hits the patient's hand. So every part of the way the inventory is tracked, if we were missing something, those cameras are on 24/7.
So, let me just follow up on that. So with the seed on the plant, you can track it also?
The seed, we don't want seeds on our plants. That would be a male plant, that would be a problem for us, because that could pollinate and create a lot of issues. I meant the seed that we plant to get the plant going, that gets a code, barcode.
Okay.
And then that barcode follows it the entire way through harvest. And then once it's harvested, that barcode follows it through production. And then once the final product's made, it follows it to the final package, ultimately ending up at the dispensary in the patient's hand.
Thank you, sir.
To further clarify as well, there's limited access in between those who are distributing that plant to have certain processes done to them. It's limited to 2 or 3 people in that entire facility. So as far as contact and volume and availability and access point, that's also limited.
Just keeping the employees honest, that's all I was concerned about.
And the other thing to add about employees too, they have restricted access. So, for example, if someone's supposed to be in a lab tech, they don't get access to the other areas of the facility. Or if they're supposed to be in the kitchen, then they're only in the kitchen. And there's no loitering on our premises. If you come in to do a trim, you leave when the trim's done. That's the type of environment that it is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great questions. All right, guys, we've had a wonderful time here together, but we need to wrap it up. I'm getting signals that the TV's shutting down. We still have 3 other, 30 minutes. But we have other agenda items as well. I want to see, is there any last points you want to make?
I just want to talk about the security system, Madam Chair. Passek Company is a company that's been in business for over 140 years, owned by a family for the last 64 years. We do a lot of high security for, different companies, Biogen, high security hospitals, pharmacies, security areas. Biometrics is the area where things are progressing, and as Mr. Sept mentioned, we're looking at iris scanning in there, and we're going to go from level 1 to level 3 right away. We're not going to a level 2 to secure that facility. As mentioned, for the transportation of the product in and out, it's going to be in a safe area known as like a sally port, like you have at the police department, where the vehicle will be pulled in, the door will be down, and then that's when the transportation's made. Any of the product that'll be leaving, they'll be leaving in a sealed box. The logistics will be all set with a timed route to a designated location, and nobody can open that box until it gets to the designated location. So those are some of the things that we looked at. Looking at the structure, it's made of cinder block structure, steel walls, very safe facility as far as life safety issues concerning fire suppression systems, as well as all the alarm systems that we would have in place.
That's great.
So.
Thank you. Any other last updates you guys want to make? Any other last questions from the board?
Look forward to your education piece, to, start educating folks in town as to what you're about and how you deal with your business.
Absolutely. What would be a great step in the right direction maybe is if you wanted to come up and tour our cultivation side, so you could see firsthand, really put your hands on things and really.
Another meeting? What are you kidding?
No, but we do appreciate that.
I'd like to thank you all very much for your time, and letting us present tonight, and we really look
Chief
forward
has
to
all
working
your
with you.
contact information?
Of course.
Okay, so
Absolutely.
I wouldn't mind.
So
throwing that
just
plan.
as the process moves forward, I would anticipate that what you're seeking is a letter of no opposition from us, which would allow you to move forward with the state.
That's right.
The on-site plan to get a PCR to be able to build.
That's right.
And then we would discuss
And
that.
typically, the form that the letter of non-opposition, or indeed the letter of support
Yes.
would take, would be a host community agreement negotiated between the town and the applicant. And just a reminder, we said it 2 weeks ago when we interviewed the other cultivation site applicant, that the state licensing procedure requires that the Board of Selectmen, we're the gatekeeper, the Board of Selectmen needs to give non-opposition or support in order for the site to proceed under the state guidelines. And that is done by the Board of Selectmen locally. Under our zoning bylaw, the RMD, Registered Marijuana Dispensary Overlay Zoning Bylaw, it's the planning board that is the special permit granting authority. And the way the bylaw is written right now, they can issue one license. That does not create a dilemma necessarily for the selectmen, that town council has advised us before that this board could theoretically do two, letters of non-opposition or support
The race
for the
is on.
state licensing process, and then, but the decision would need to be made, in that case, by the planning board, which would have to choose between two, assuming that two proceeded. So you have the opportunity to cut the competition down from 2 to 1, but you don't have the obligation to do that.
But we do, just to clarify from the last time we spoke on the subject, we can negotiate the host community.
Host community agreement.
Before they go to the planning board part of the
Yes, you
process.
can, sure.
Okay,
You bet.
okay, good.
Yep. And so we'll have to schedule that for
Right.
a future
We could theoretically do that with
meeting.
each, and then let
You
them
do it with,
do it.
you could decide that you want to negotiate 2 agreements with 2 separate entities, or you could,
Do none?
you could, you could do 2, 1, or none.
So as far, they submitted an HCA to us. I don't know if you guys are at a point where you're ready to do any negotiations, but I would imagine that if we would incline to move forward, that there's some sort of a timeline that you need to work under,
Yes,
especially.
yes.
Like yesterday?
Well, Jimmy, you mentioned that there's some level of agreement with the seller of Taylor
Time is of
Street.
the essence, certainly. I mean, there is some flexibility relative to the transition, the acquisition of the property. But, it's a 6-month timeline, but keep in mind that we can work, our efforts on the state level, we can work with the planning board here on the special permit currently, so that'll save us some time.
Keith, would that be, if we had discussions on strategy for negotiation, a host community agreement with these folks and the other applicants, would that be executive session eligible?
The last time we did a host community agreement on Cooper Farm, the Attorney General didn't say that we couldn't be in executive session.
That was under
So-
land purchase. Let me think
Yeah.
about that one.
Yeah.
That was a value of land.
This is negotiation. I mean, look, I don't want to go down that road one way or the other without having thought that through, so,
Right.
Yeah, we'll see. It won't be the value of the land, it'll be I don't know, it'll be the value of what we get because of the land.
Exactly.
Right.
Maybe it'll be tied to the value of.
Yeah, I think it almost certainly will be tied to the value of the land.
Okay, we understand there's a time-sensitive component to this.
Very much so.
Yep. So, okay, I think
I
that's it
think
for now.
your earliest opportunity will be, I gotta tell you, you're already booked solid for next Monday night, and it's just a few days away.
Catch you another meeting on tonight? Great.
No.
I'm in charge next
No, it
Monday,
won't be.
though, so it'll be all right.
Thank you.
I can't wait to watch.
But,
Stream it live from
Yeah.
California.
Yeah.
But I
good-
think
good
the
viewing.
meeting, I think it's more reasonable that the meeting on the 17th of October will be your next
Well,
opportunity.
me not liking more meetings. But would it be wise to have a joint meeting with the planning board and call it a public hearing and just be able to get it done one shot?
Well, they have to go to the
They're
state
gonna
before it
have
goes
a-
to the planning board. I think you gotta keep that separate, right?
Yeah,
The HCA is.
Planning board is ultimately gonna be hearing an application.
Well, what I'm
for
saying,
public hearing
I'm not saying to make any decision, but to have a public hearing, to be able to have the public come in and ask these folks questions with us and the planning board together. We're not
I
making,
think you're further down the road than we need to be,
Right.
all right.
yeah, because we negotiate the HCA.
No, I get that. I'm not talking about the HCA. I'm
I know.
talking about,
And they have their own regulatory process, I'd hate to
Two
prejudice
boards.
that, you know, that's.
Okay.
That's what I'm concerned, I don't want to put the planning board in a situation where we're handing an appeal to
Okay.
someone because we got them involved in something.
We can invite them to be in the audience.
Yeah, they can always attend.
okay.
Which is, to be clear, what we're seeking right now is a letter of support
Yep.
or non-opposition. So the planning and everything like that comes after, naturally.
What we're saying is the form of that letter will be in a host community agreement. So-
And which is what,
Which is what you proposed, you've got your draft, so
Yeah, and
we're halfway there.
Appreciate it, I mean, this is, you're putting your foot forward with submitting to us,
Like the old joke goes, now we're just negotiating costs.
For the sake of time, which I don't know if the board wants to empower a subcommittee, well, we won't call it that, but two members, when we've done other negotiations.
That's a good idea.
If we've had a couple, maybe you could do that now, and then we could follow up and not
Sure.
be a clip. And I would say you should do that for both.
So, I mean, my inclination is, close your ears, that there's an opportunity for us to move forward here. Create some business,
Yeah.
I'm happy with the two that started this process, completed, I just
she's gonna be
hope.
gone for the
That's
next 2
Oh,
weeks.
2
oh,
weeks,
well.
yeah, that's the thing. I don't want to be the bottleneck that I am.
I'm happy to stay
Could you do it
involved.
via phone?
Well, with the
Yeah.
continuity, why not you, and Jim, you've been, you're wide open, huh? Yeah.
Yeah, all right. I'm in.
Just keep us informed is all I would ask. I don't know, I'm happy to work through surrogates, but hate to just show up at the last minute and find things out.
It'll be that last page of the last packet of
Right.
the last.
That's what I go to
At
first.
10:20 at night.
Is there, just give us an idea on timeline, is there, as far as a sense of urgency or, you know,
Well,
not that
the
we necessarily
situation,
have to operate under that, but.
So there is money that will go hard, a deposit, meaning we're gonna lose out on the money at X date. I'm not sure what that is, but I can say that time is certainly of the essence to get a letter and move forward with the state. And, you know, the planning board, that's not an emergency at this point. But definitely I'd wanna know, do you feel that we would be a good community partner? And if you do, and we come to terms on a community host agreement and move forward, then I think we'd be in a good position, basically, for the planning board and the other.
So we should probably sit down quick, see what our expectations are, and then we'll get both of them in, and, I mean, I can't see more than one meeting each. Hammer it out, know what our expectations are, what theirs are, get it done.
Yes.
Makes sense.
So, good. Jim and I will be in touch.
Thank you very much.
Can I make a suggestion?
Please.
Just so we don't run afoul of the open meeting law, why don't you have Keith and Tom as the negotiating committee, and we can draw on, you know, Keith can always draw on your expertise to come in and help, but put Keith in charge.
So I don't think we're necessarily gonna be doing the negotiations, because that's gonna be done by the whole board. I think we're a subcommittee to gather the information, Tom.
I don't think you're a
Still okay?
subcommittee. No.
We wanna hammer out the HCA.
No, we want to do it,
Yeah.
So
why are you saying that, Tom? Tom, what do you mean, open meeting
So
law?
I think Keith's got a pretty good idea of what you want to accomplish.
Yeah?
I think Keith and I can work on it, and when we put Keith in charge of the task,
we can call you.
he can draw on whatever expertise from this board that he needs without having to post a meeting in 2 minutes. So it's a subtle shift.
Okay.
I didn't see it as a violation, but
I don't
your
either. I'd
town
like to
council.
talk to you afterwards about that.
Clyde.
Could you do a letter of non-opposition as a start so they can proceed? Because it seems like you're not opposed and
No.
you can't do that.
Let's get an
It can't
agreement
be,
first.
yeah.
No, the agreement, the reason we will not be opposed, or we would be supportive of this because we've successfully negotiated a host community agreement, which I think we're.
Good question.
Would be able to, I think, I'm confident. we'll
You're
be
saying
able to do
conditional
that.
on signing an
Well, you
HCA,
Start the process and then,
so that they can go forward, George?
but I understand what Keith's saying.
Yeah.
Mr. Sanders?
Why they don't know the date?
Jimmy, what's the date for when the money goes hard? What is it, 30 or 60 days from?
It's 27 days from now.
Okay.
But that's not your
But that's
issue.
not-
It's
yeah, that's not-
It's a contract that we've
you
embarked
can-
upon,
you
that should
can-
have no bearing in your process, but I mean.
You might be able to get an extension or something like
Yeah,
that.
You
if
get
we're
an
not able to-
extension.
yeah.
And that's the cost of doing
I think
business.
I think we'd be more concerned if there was some deadline that the state licensing
Right.
procedure
Yeah.
had, that if you don't get it in, because we heard a lot about that a
Well, there
couple
are
of years
deadlines
ago.
on
We
the
did
side,
have
too.
those deadlines. The state actually, in their wisdom, because they realized that the process was taking a lot longer than they initially thought, put a 1-year extension from the date that you're invited to site plan. But
Okay.
for us, we're working with other municipalities on the dispensing side, so it would just be best if we can move through PCR in a fashion with as many locations as we can. But we understand, I mean,
Okay, all right, we literally have to wrap it up now.
I just wanted to bring the HCA up, and I think
Yeah,
that,
thank you for that.
appreciate the presentation, Chief, thank you for coming out, all of you, Sam, for all of you.
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Safe travels.
Thank you. Good to see you guys.
Thank you all.
You guys will coordinate, figure that out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
All right,
Thank you very much.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks so much. All right, we don't have minutes, right? Keith?
Okay,
Thank God.
Thank you.
All right. We need to go into executive session now, and LCTV has said, be clear if we will be returning or not returning from it.
So we have two, so I'll make two motions. Move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, subsection 21, subsection A, Clause 3, to convene an executive session.
Guys, we're still wrapping up. Guys, sorry, we're still wrapping up here. Yeah, where's our gap?
All right. Where was I? With respect to litigation, a matter of Purcell versus Town of Littleton, since the open meeting may have detrimental effect to the litigation position of the board, we will not convene an open session thereafter.
Second.
So moved and seconded, all those in favor? Oh, no, wait, roll call.
Aye.
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 All right, Madam Chair, move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, 30A subsection 21A, 6, to go into executive session to consider the value of real property, since the open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the board's negotiating position relative to Joyce Williams' property on 31 Boxborough Road, and not convene into open session thereafter. Second.
So moved and seconded, roll call.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Very good. Thank you. Good night, folks.
Good night, everybody.